And we are live for week 9. How are we doing, everyone? It is going to be a fantastic Sunday. If you're already in the YouTube live, let me get some confirmation that the audio is okay for those of you that were on the Thursday night live this week. Week 9, let's go. We got a lot of fun games coming onto our TV screens in just over 3 hours. Going to be a lot to talk through today. Some very, very difficult start-sit decisions today. We're going to get to hundreds of start-sit questions on this live. We're going to go game by game, talk about what to expect from each game, all of the relevant fantasy players in each game. Shout out to everybody already in the live stream with me at the very beginning. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button. It helps me out way more than you realize. I do want to jump through just a few of these early start-sit questions we're seeing before I go into the game-by-game section like I've been doing the past Sunday mornings. There are some specific players that I'm expecting to see a lot of start-sit questions about today. One of those guys, I think, is James Conner. And James Conner has a difficult matchup this week. I still think he needs to be started in basically all situations. Him versus Kareem Hunt is probably pretty close. Hunt has a good matchup too. I think it's James Conner, though. Yeah, over Kareem Hunt. I think I would go that way. And then McLaurin versus DJ Moore. Yeah, both these guys in pretty good spots this week, too. I think I would lean towards Terry McLaurin. DJ Moore's ranks a little bit ahead of him versus the Cardinals. Both these guys have been doing pretty well at times this season. McLaurin's been balling. He's been better this season than DJ Moore. 15 points per game. DJ Moore is at 12 points per game. Back-to-back down games, better matchup for DJ Moore. This is a tough call. I think it's okay to go DJ Moore, though, looking a little closer at that. We will get to that game as well. Seeing a lot of tough start-sits already in the TikTok live. Guys, shout out to everybody already in the live stream. We're going to go game by game. I got rankings for every single position ready to go. Let me pull up the QB rankings first. I'll pull these up first. QB rankings is usually a good place to start. Pull those up on both live streams as we get into the game by game section. Good morning, Matthew. Good morning to everybody in the live. Looks like the audio is working okay this morning on the Sunday morning live. You absolutely love to see that. We'll talk through the must benches, the must starts as well. Got some great options today. Downs, Hill, Cup, Mooney, and Scary Terry. Yeah, Matt, those are amazing options. And Josh Downs has to be started this week. I mean, there's really no way not to start him. We got Flacco in. Now, we've seen what this means for Josh Downs. Then he gets the Vikings on top of it. You got to start Tyreek for sure as well. I think you bench Mooney, you bench Scary Terry if you have Josh Downs for sure this week. And yeah, that's a good spot to be in. I'm seeing a question in the TikTok live about Worthy and D-Hop. I do like D-Hop as a sleeper this week. I think I'd still go Worthy over him. Tuning in from Australia again. What's going on, Nikki? Mahomes or Kyler? Yeah, you can't bench Mahomes this week. I really don't think so. Some potential weather in that game tomorrow night. Not enough to get me concerned, though. Just a little bit of rain. I'm playing Mahomes against the Bucs. The Bucs have been close to dead last versus QBs this week. All right. I'll never forget your Garrett Wilson take after Adams got traded. Hope the team remains this way. Yeah, I certainly did not expect the Adams trade to help Garrett Wilson. I still think that take is somewhat based. Garrett Wilson already played this week, so he won't be in the start-sit tool. But Devontae Adams did out-target Garrett Wilson this past game. Obviously, Garrett Wilson balled, had a better fantasy game. Clearly still a good wide receiver 2, arguably back-end wide receiver 1 for Garrett Wilson, but there's going to be games where he's not the most targeted receiver on his own team. There's going to be games where Devontae Adams steals the touchdowns, and we hit on the Adams props, at least on Thursday night, so that's good to see. All right, let's get to the game-by-game outlook for what we're expecting today. We got a lot of good games today, starting out with the Commanders versus the Giants. Washington Commanders, only 4-point favorites in this game. A little bit surprising. In New York, these two teams already played each other back in, I think it was week 2. Yeah, week 2. This was Jaden Daniels, really his worst full game that we've seen from Jaden Daniels this season was back in week 2. Only 226 passing yards, 44 rushing yards, his only full game this season without a touchdown. He only played 10% of snaps, 15% of snaps in this week 7 game, so you can ignore that one. If you're watching live on YouTube, by the way, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, come to the YouTube live. I'm telling you, the YouTube live is a better viewing experience. We're looking at Jaden Daniels' game logs on the screen right now as we're talking about the Commanders-Giants game. Jaden Daniels, the must start, though. He's right up there in tier 1 still. He, surprisingly, to me at least, Still ran a lot last week off the rib injury, 52 rushing yards. I wasn't even sure he was going to play in that game. He's got at least 35 rushing yards in all but one game this season. He's been incredibly consistent. Went over 20 points again last week versus the Bears. Probably going over 20 points again this week. Extremely, extremely high floor for Jaden Daniels. Brian Robinson sounds like he's going to play. He was a true question mark heading into today. It does sound like he's on the right side of questionable. This is a good matchup for Brian Robinson. Definitely still think he is borderline must start in a lot of situations. He only played 47% of snaps last week. That was up from the 37% before. He'll probably be right around that again, but good chance at a touchdown, good chance at a bunch of rushing yards versus the Giants today. He's averaging almost a touchdown per game, Brian Robinson. Around 65 rushing yards and a touchdown per game for B-Rob. Definitely think he's still must start. Terry McLaurin is also, in must start territory in a lot of situations. Just got to a question earlier at the beginning of the live. By the way, we're going to get to hundreds of start sits over the course of the live. I want to talk through every single game first to get my thoughts out about every single game, every single player. Give myself, too, a chance to think through some of these tougher start sits before diving into the start sit segment of the live stream, which we'll have multiple hours for. Good morning, everyone, by the way, who's tuned in right now. If you're just tuning in, guys, hit the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Smash the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. I'll switch up the rankings now. Yeah, let's go to the wide receiver rankings. I can't, if you're watching live on TikTok, I will not see your comment unless you're following. That's just how it works on my end with TikTok. We have enough followers that it's going to show the follower comments over the non-follower comments. So hit the follow button if you want your comment answered on the TikTok live. All right. We got the wide receiver ranks up now. Coker or Bucky. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of Jalen Coker questions. And I think I would play him over Bucky Irving specifically this week. I don't think Jalen Coker is like this smash must-start player that you need to force into your lineup. But yeah, I would play him over Bucky, who I'm benching this week. We'll get to those games coming up here momentarily. So yeah, the must-starts really on the Commanders, the pretty obvious ones. Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz. Some people are going to have some Zach Ertz questions. We've had Zach Ertz questions every week. He's been over 14 PPR points in back-to-back games. He's coming off a season-high catches, a season-high yards, 7 for 77 last week versus the Bears. The Giants have been very good against tight ends, though. Zach Ertz is really just a back-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2 is where I would put him. We have not seen a good game really since the start of the season versus the Giants at the tight end position. They rank first in terms of fantasy points allowed. Only 8 points allowed to tight ends. They haven't played the best tight ends. To be fair, Zach Ertz had 10 points against them in that week 2 matchup. Ferguson had 12 points against them. No tight ends had more than that 12 that Ferg had, though. They played basically nobody, but still not the best spot here for Zach Ertz. And Eckler's not a guy you need to force either. All right, on the Giants side of the ball, Tyrone Tracy. I expect a lot of start sits with Tracy today, and I expect to tell a lot of people to start Tyrone Tracy today. Pretty surprising. He cleared the concussion protocol in less than a week. Did not miss a single game. He got knocked out of last game on Monday Night Football against the Steelers on a short week. Gets through the concussion protocol. He balled last week versus the Steelers. 145 rushing yards. He had one really long rushing touchdown in that game. He also had 2 catches, 5 yards. He is the best receiving back on the team, and he's looking like the best rusher in the backfield as well. So yeah, Tyrone Tracy is a good start versus the Commanders. They have not been a very good defense this whole season. Feel pretty good about starting him. And I think he's a compelling guy rest of season. Not the best schedule rest of season, especially as you get into the fantasy football playoffs, a bunch of bottom 12 matchups there. But if the role is going to be what we saw in the week 6, week 7 range, even with Singletary back, which I think it could be, he had an 80% rush share on Monday night, despite dealing with the injury. 7.2 yards per carry versus the Steelers. So yeah, Tracy's a start this week for sure. I don't want to start Wandale if I don't have to. I don't want to start Daniel Jones if I don't have to. Obviously, Neighbors is a must start. He's a top 10 receiver this week. I would start Josh Downs over Neighbors if I had to make that choice, though. Just to give you a sense of where I'm at with Josh Downs. Playing Josh Downs over Ladd. Yep, seeing that one in the YouTube live. We had Terry McLaurin. Let me go to the wide receiver ranks here. Is it possible I left Scary Terry out somehow? Looks like I did. That must have been a mistake on my end. Let's go back to the Commanders here quick. Yeah, I would put Terry McLaurin right ahead of or right behind Michael Pittman Jr. I'd put him ahead of Sutton, I think. I definitely would play him over Jaden Reed. I can adjust this on the YouTube live quick. We're going to call him 19B for simplicity. But yeah, I do think Terry McLaurin's borderline must start this week. We got the running back ranks up now. Brian Thomas Jr. is low because he's playing through an injury. Gabe Davis is going to be out this week. Sounds like Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be able to go. Just a little bit of a scarier spot for BTJ. And I thought there was a pretty good chance he wasn't going to play this week. Does seem like he's going to play. But I think there's a lot of risk to Brian Thomas Jr. this week for sure. All right, on to the Broncos game. So the Commanders, they're favored by 4. I expect them to win by more than 4. But we have the Giants at home in that one. On to the Broncos-Ravens game. The Ravens are favored by 9.5 points in this game. That feels like too many points. We said that about the Browns-Ravens game last week. That game ended up being close. The Ravens actually lost that one to the Browns. Obviously, expect the Ravens to win. Bo Nix is a good starting quarterback this week. You can feel pretty good about Bo Nix. He ranks as a top 10 quarterback this week. The Ravens rank dead last in terms of QB points allowed. Bo Nix coming off his best fantasy game of the season. He had 30 points last week versus the Panthers. Obviously, this is a tougher defense than the Panthers, but how much tougher? Really not that much tougher from the quarterback perspective. Winston had 24 points last week versus the Ravens. Mayfield had 30 points. Jaden Daniels had 20. Joe Burrow had 35. These are their last 4 opponents, all going over 20 points. Bo Nix isn't as good as Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. Not as good as Baker Mayfield even, but he's got the rushing floor. He's going to be playing from behind as a 9.5-point underdog. You can feel pretty good about the floor for Bo Nix this week. He is a good start over a lot of other quarterbacks this week. Courtland Sutton is definitely startable as well. I'd put him like right behind Terry McLaurin probably. If I had to make that start decision, I'd probably still go Scary Terry. Sutton's coming off his best game of the season. After a donut in week 7, Sutton bounces back, 8 catches, 100 yards last week for Sutton. You got to think he goes somewhat similar to what we saw last week against the Ravens secondary that ranks second to worst versus receivers this season. Back to almost a 30% target share for Sutton last week. He's clearly the number 1 receiver on this team. Still lacks a true ceiling. No games over 20 points this season. But yeah, Sutton and Nix, both decent starts here versus the Ravens. I'm scared about Javonte Williams. I would put him in the borderline bench territory. He only had 9 points versus the Panthers last week. An extremely disappointing performance for Javonte last week. Only 2.6 yards per carry versus the Panthers. And now we get a much more difficult matchup versus the Ravens, a matchup where the Broncos are going to be trailing. And there was just a report just a few minutes ago from Tracy Wolfson saying that Audric Estime is expected to get more involved this week. That's also bad news for Javonte. Probably has something to do with this 2.6 yards per carry Javonte had versus one of the worst run defenses in the NFL last week. So yeah, I don't want to start Javonte this week if I don't have to. And none of these other guys are starting. Absolutely none of them. So Sutton's a decent start. Nix is a decent sleeper this week. And then don't start any of the other Broncos players if you don't need to. And then the Ravens side of the ball. Lamar still projects as QB1 despite a somewhat difficult matchup. Derrick Henry still a top 10 running back despite a pretty average matchup. I still think Derrick Henry's an interesting guy to try to sell in fantasy football. He's through the easiest part of his schedule, guys. And he's got a more difficult schedule rest of season. He is touchdown dependent. In PPR leagues, there's a bunch of running backs I would prefer over Derrick Henry, a bunch of receivers I would prefer over Derrick Henry. Half PPR, non-PPR, I would not be trading Derrick Henry. But you can get a lot for him. That's part of the reason I think you can trade him right now. You can get basically anything you want for Derrick Henry. But he's still a top 10 running back option this week. Obviously a must start. Zay Flowers, a little bit of a scarier start this week. They trade for Deontay Johnson. I do not expect that to affect Zay Flowers at all this week. Probably not going to affect him much just in general rest of season. The Broncos have been a somewhat scary matchup for receivers, especially when Pat Surtain has been healthy. Jalen Coker had 18 points last week, though. We're going to talk about Jalen Coker. Cedric Wilson, he had 17.7 points. The week before that, there was no Surtain in that game. I think Surtain was active last week. Zay Flowers is still a pretty good start in PPR leagues. Still has a pretty decent ceiling. The floor is a little scary against the Broncos, but still a start. Mark Andrews, I prefer to bench. I'd rather play Taysom Hill. Happy Taysom Hill week, by the way, for all those who celebrate. Happy Taysom Hill Day. We had National Tight End Day last week. Today's National Taysom Hill Day. So happy to Taysom Hill Day for everyone that celebrates. But yeah, I play Taysom Hill over Mark Andrews. And I think that pretty much makes Mark Andrews a must bench in most leagues. He's startable in certain spots. I would start him over Zach Ertz, for example. And Mark Andrews is definitely a guy to monitor. this week because the snap percentage went up last week for Mark Andrews. Let me hop over to the tight end ranks quick as I talk through Mark Andrews here. I got him ranked as tight end 12. Mark Andrews, his snap share did go up. And part of the reason we've been down on Mark Andrews has been the usage in the playing time, not necessarily the efficiency. This was his first game over a 70% snap share last week since week 1. It was his first game over a 60% route participation since week 2. So his role really did rise last week. The target share was only 14%. That's not too exciting. Still does not have a game over a 20% target share. Guys, go back to the 2023 game logs like we're doing on the YouTube live. Again, guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live, better viewing experience. I can share screen to some of this stuff on the YouTube live. We go back to last season and you take a look at the target shares. Guys, he averaged a 20% target share last season. He was over a 20% target share almost every single week last season before his injury. Hasn't hit that once this year. So yeah, Mark Andrews still not a must start. Definitely intriguing to see his playing time go up, his route participation go up, but not a must start in this game. And I would, again, play Taysom Hill over him this week. That's it for the Ravens. You can't really start Rashad Bateman in this matchup. You can't start Isaiah Likely at this point. You're definitely not starting Deontay Johnson either. Sounds like he might play, 10 to 15 snaps or something like that. Weird stuff, by the way, with the Deontay Johnson trade. They gave up basically nothing, as close to nothing as you can give up for a player of Deontay Johnson's caliber. Sounds like they don't have massive plans for him in the actual offense with actual target shares. Deontay Johnson is borderline droppable, I think, in fantasy right now. Do not expect much relevance from him from the fantasy football perspective. It seems like a good trade, though, for the Ravens from a real football perspective. All right, that's the Ravens-Broncos game. I expect the Broncos to cover this 9.5-point spread, but there's really not that many must-starts on the Broncos side outside of Nix and Sutton. I would want to bench Javonte Williams if I can. We're starting Lamar, obviously. We're starting Henry, obviously. And I still think Zay Flowers is a good start. On to the Dolphins-Bills game. I was actually at this game back in week 2 in Miami. This was the game that Tua got injured in versus Buffalo. Something that went overlooked in that last Dolphins-Bills game was how bad Tua played before the injury. The injury took all the storylines, obviously, after that game. Tua had one of his worst games in his career prior to the injury back in week 2. He threw 3 interceptions in that game. One of them was a brutal pick 6. He only had 145 passing yards. He was at 5.8 yards per attempt, one of the lowest in his career. I do expect him to play better than he did in that week 2 matchup, but definitely something to file away as you think about this Bills-Dolphins game. The Dolphins are 6.5-point underdogs in this game in Buffalo. This game is one of the highest over-unders of the week. Obviously, you're starting Tyreek. You absolutely need to be starting Achane. Achane, who had 7 catches last week. He had 8 targets. He had 6 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown last week. Now he gets the Bills. The Buffalo Bills have allowed the 3rd most receptions, the 3rd most receiving yards per game to running backs this season to the running backs. So yeah, Achane needs to be started in PPR leagues, has an absolutely massive ceiling. Tyreek Hill has to be started. Tua is not a guy I really want to start. And then Jalen Waddle is one of the biggest headaches in all of fantasy football. He's in this category of guys for fantasy that you can't drop and you can't start. The worst category really to be in for fantasy football. You can't start him and you can't drop him. This is a week that I think you can talk yourself into starting Jalen Waddle, though. He's going up against the Bills as a 6.5-point underdog. This game is one of the highest over-unders of the week, and Tua is back. We've seen 2 full games with Jalen Waddle and Tua this season. One of them in week 1, Waddle had 16.2 points, went over 100 yards, had 5 catches. Last week, 4 catches, 45 yards. Nothing super exciting, but an 8.5-point floor is not terrible. He played almost every single snap. He had a 15% target share. He only had a 14% target share back in week 1 in that other game. Definitely room to grow in terms of the target shares. His air yard share and his air yards actually haven't been bad, though, in those games. Over 25% in both. I think Waddle has an intriguing ceiling in this game. Obviously, the floor is a little scary. He is startable, I think, though, in this matchup with the Dolphins likely to be trailing. And then nobody else I think you want to start in this game. Raheem Mostert, don't think you can trust him. He scored a couple touchdowns last week. They made some comments after the game. They want to get Jalen Wright more involved. Mostert was at 2.1 yards per carry last week, a bunch of goal line carries, so that definitely brings that down. Jalen Wright, Raheem Mostert, Jonnu Smith, none of these guys I want to start. And I don't think you can start Tua either. Thoughts on Tracy? We talked about Tracy already in that Giants game. I think he's borderline must start this week. Let me go to the must start, must benches on the TikTok live quick. And we'll switch over to the wide receiver. Let's actually go to the QB ranks here on the YouTube Live. We're going to get to the start sits, by the way, guys. I would play Bo Nix, I think, over Kyler Murray. We talked about that Broncos game. I think they were actually really close in my ranks. Yeah, they're back-to-back. I think I would go Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is just as good of a floor, if not better, than Kyler this week. All right, so on the Bills side of the ball, there's a lot of difficult start-sit decisions when it comes to the wide receivers for the Buffalo Bills today. Obviously, we're starting Josh Allen. Obviously, you got to start James Cook. James Cook, one of his best games of the season, came in week 2 versus the Dolphins. He had 29 points. It was actually his best game of the season, 28.5 points in that game. He scored 3 total touchdowns, was dominant on the ground. And none of the Bills players even played in the fourth quarter of that game when James Cook had 28.5 points back in week 2 versus the Dolphins. So James Cook's got to be started. Bless you. Thank you. So we're starting James Cook. We're starting Josh Allen. Then it gets really murky, I think, with these receivers. Amari Cooper is a guy that I really am scared to start. I'm scared to start Amari Cooper this week. One of the only injuries still to get confirmation about is this Amari Cooper wrist injury. Amari Cooper still might not play this week. It has not been confirmed that he's playing. So be careful with Amari Cooper and make sure you're tuning back into this live stream or you're looking at the news report at least 30 minutes before the game. We'll be live right up till we get these reports officially of all these guys that are active or inactive. Amari Cooper still might be inactive in this game. And if he's inactive, that obviously shifts a lot of these more difficult Bills receiver start sits to be a little bit easier. May the Lord bless you. Thanks, Matthew. Khalil Shakir's a start this week after his last couple of games. Of all the Bills receivers, I know he's projecting a little bit worse in the Walter Picks app He's projecting a little bit worse compared to Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir. I would go Shakir over Amari Cooper. If I had to make that choice right now, that's what I would do. Shakir has 16 catches, guys, in his last 2 games. He's got 16 catches and 170 yards in his last 2 games. I mean, his role has been incredible. He had a 30% target share last week. He's got 17 targets, 16 catches over his last 2 games. Both these games, Amari Cooper was active. So the floor is really high, I think, for Shakir. I think that the weather played a little bit of a role in an increased target share for Khalil Shakir last week. We actually have, Weatherman Sam does have a report for us. There's a game this week with a similar weather report to the Bills-Seahawks game last week. But Khalil Shakir is a start. I think he's a high floor PPR option. And Keon Coleman, I'd prefer to bench if I can. He's been balling in back-to-back games. He's really broken out over the last 2 games. Keon Coleman is making a name for himself for sure. I think the floor is definitely still low, though, in this game versus the Dolphins. The Dolphins do rank 6th best versus receivers so far this season. Keon Coleman exactly at 22% target share over the last couple of games, seeing a lot of air yards. He saw back-to-back end zone targets last week. If Amari's out, I definitely will change my vibe towards Keon Coleman for this week. If Amari's in, a little bit worried about Keon. He's startable, though. He's going to be in some difficult start-sit decisions. I got him ranked as wide receiver 28. Terry McLaurin should be on this list. Accidentally left him off the wide receiver rankings list. He slots in right above Courtland Sutton. I put him probably ahead of Michael Pittman. I probably would start him over Terry McLaurin over JSN too. I got that fix on the YouTube live where I can make changes, post the live starting. And by the way, shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. We are just getting started. We're only a few games in, talking through every single game on this live stream. Of course, we'll talk about every single player, and there's going to be so much time for specific start-sit questions in the comments as well. I'm seeing them. We're going to get to a lot of them. There's a lot of overlap in some of the players people are asking about. We're going to get there. Hit the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Do appreciate that. Helps me out way more than you realize. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, smash the follow button. Takes you 2 seconds. That also helps me out way more than you realize. And yeah, McLaurin accidentally left out in these wide receiver rankings on the TikTok live. We did already talk through Terry McLaurin. He's a must start. He really is in the must start territory. I put him over Courtland Sutton and over Michael Pittman Jr. and over Jackson Smith and Jigba in these wide receiver rankings. I think there's even a case to go Scary Terry over Zay Flowers and slot him in right behind DJ Moore, right around wide receiver 16. I think I would go DJ, Jacoby, Devontae, and everyone else above over Terry McLaurin. All right, let's get to the next game here. I don't feel great about Kincaid this week, especially if Amari Cooper plays. Kincaid feels like a worse option to Taysom Hill this week also. Therefore, I'm not very excited to start Kincaid. We haven't seen Kincaid go over 14 PPR points a single time this whole season. I mean, what is the ceiling, guys, for Dalton Kincaid in an offense that's spreading the ball around the top? It's just not a huge ceiling. Let me go to the QB ranks, seeing a lot of QB questions. Switch over to the QB ranks here on the YouTube Live as well. Let's get to this next game between the Raiders and the Bengals. The Bengals 7.5-point favorites at home. Pretty crazy to wrap your head around. The Ravens are 9.5-point favorites at home versus the Broncos. The Bengals only 7.5-point favorites at home versus the Raiders. There's no T. Higgins again this week. Jamar Chase arguably should be the wide receiver 1 in projections this week. We got him at wide receiver 2, I think only behind, I think it's Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, we got him behind CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb had like a 40% target share last week. We could see an insane game here for Jamar Chase. He had a 30% target share last week, 11 targets, converted that into 20 fantasy points, 9 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Massive ceiling for Jamar Chase in this game. Got him projected for 95 yards and over half a touchdown versus the Raiders, who have not been bad versus receivers this season. But obviously, we're starting Jamar Chase. We still feel good, I think, starting Joe Burrow. Still projects actually ahead of Bo Nix. I would start Burrow over Nix. What website do I use for analytics? I use the Walter Picks app. I've helped build the Walter Picks app over the last 4 years. It's not a website. It's an app. It's free. It's in the YouTube description. It's in the TikTok bio. It's the best place to go for advanced player stats for free. And then there's premium subscriptions that are well worth the price in the app. If you use code SAM, you'll get a free 7-day trial to the Walter Picks app. But you really don't even need the subscriptions to get all the value from the app if you're not trying to sync your fantasy leagues. And it's also massive for player props. Definitely encourage you guys to try the Walter Picks app. All right. Chase Brown's must start this week. You really can't bench Chase Brown. There's no Zach Moss. The Raiders have not been a very scary defense versus running backs this season. The Bengals are 7.5-point favorites at home. Chase Brown's really, this is going to be a coming out party for Chase Brown this week. We should see him get the best usage he's seen all season. We have not seen a game yet this season where Chase Brown's been over 65% snap share. The one game where he hit 62%, he had almost 15 points versus the Giants. We have not seen a game with a super significant rush share. We've seen some decent target shares, but he hasn't been over 14% once, hasn't been over 60% rush share once. He might do both those things in the same game today. So feel pretty good about Chase Brown in this matchup versus the Raiders. Raiders is a big favorite. Mike Gesicki, he's an interesting sleeper at tight end, but you got to play Taysom Hill over Gesicki, of course. And Jermaine Burton. I'm intrigued about some of these Jermaine Burton murmurs going on out there. He only had 1 catch for 41 yards last week, but there's no T. Higgins again. And there's some discussion of getting him more involved. He had a season high, career high, 41% snap share last week. He is clearly more talented than Yoshivas. He clearly is a better 1-for-1 T. Higgins replacement than Yoshivas, the rookie wide receiver who slid in the NFL draft for character concerns, some of which have already shown up this season and are part of the reason he hasn't played really at all. But I'm definitely intrigued by the potential increasing role for Jermaine Burton. He's definitely a very deep sleeper this week. And then on the Raiders side of the ball, start Brock Bowers, start Jacoby Myers. Madison is startable in certain situations, and then everyone else has to be benched. Every single other player on the Raiders has to be benched. Brock Bowers projects as tight end 1. I think we probably see the first Brock Bowers or second Brock Bowers touchdown of the season this week. We've only seen 1 Brock Bowers touchdown. He ranks number 1 in receptions, 2nd in yards, 2nd in fantasy points per game. He's tight end 1 this week versus the Bengals. You got to be starting Brock Bowers. Feel very good about Brock Bowers. I would be going Bo Nix over Kyler Murray. We already mentioned that one. Let's go hop over to the tight end ranks here again quick. Brock Bowers is really in tight end 1 tier, tier 1. Him and Kelsey are right up there. It's either him or Kelsey that you're going to project as tight end 1 this week. Then there's a pretty big gap between him, Kelsey, and then Otten, McBride, and Njoku. Evan Ingram are the tier 2 tight ends. Madison, they're saying they want Zamir White more involved. I mean, Madison and Zamir White, they both have had just absolutely brutally inefficient games. 1.1 yards per carry for Madison versus the Chiefs last week. Still had 5 catches, though, to save his fantasy day, 9 points. He's definitely a better receiving back than Zamir White, and he doesn't have to play the Chiefs this week. Chiefs are the toughest matchup for running backs in the NFL right now. So start Jacoby Myers. I think Jacoby Myers actually has a pretty strong floor in this game. He had 17 points versus the Chiefs last week, 6 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Really impressive outing versus the Chiefs last week. 26% target share. He's the clear top receiver on the team. He has an easier matchup versus the Bengals this week. I played Jacoby Myers over a bunch of receivers that you probably wouldn't expect. Guys like Zay Flowers, Guys like DJ Moore. I think Jacoby Myers is startable over. I would start Jacoby Myers over Terry McLaurin if I had to make that choice. I think he has a better floor than a lot of those guys. Start McBride or Ladd. Yeah, that's actually pretty close. There's some tight end questions that are probably close in terms of the flex. I probably would lean Ladd over McBride, but it's certainly a close one. I think the Raiders probably cover the spread here of 7.5, by the way. Bengals should probably win the game, though. All right, on to the Cowboys-Falcons game. Probably one of the more exciting games of the week, in my opinion. This has the highest over-under of the week. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb needs to be started. Whoever had CeeDee Lamb in their lineups last week, you had to feel pretty good about the 49ers just leaving him wide open for 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Definitely changed a lot of fantasy matchups for me. Last week, in a good way, I have a lot of CeeDee Lamb on a lot of my fantasy teams. He had a season-high 46% target share. Last week, insane target shares that CeeDee Lamb is seeing. He's now seen over a 30% target share in 3 of his last 4 games for CeeDee Lamb. He finally had a multiple touchdown game. He finally had his first game over 100 yards last week, and he definitely has a chance to keep this going here versus the Falcons, who have been about average versus receivers this season. Again, this game is the highest over-under of the week, too, and the Cowboys are 3-point underdogs in Atlanta. CeeDee Lamb coming off a 40-point game. Obviously a must start. I think Dak Prescott's also a must start this week. Let me hop over back to the QBs on the TikTok live. I think I'm still there on the YouTube live. Yeah. Dak Prescott's a must start. Really, he's right after the top tier. He's right in that tier with Mahomes and Burrow. I think tier 1 this week, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson. That's tier 1. And then tier 2, there's only 3 guys, I think, in tier 2 that just are must starts. You should feel really good starting them. Dak, Burrow, and Mahomes. I have Dak and Mahomes projected for the exact same amount this week. I think Dak versus Mahomes is close. I think I lean towards Dak over Mahomes. It's extremely close, though. But yeah, Dak has a really good ceiling, a pretty solid floor. I know he didn't do great last week against the 49ers, 15 points. He threw multiple bad interceptions in that game, 2 interceptions for Dak in that game, but he still had 243 passing yards, 2 TDs. I think that's about his floor in this game this week. He still has a really high potential for pass volume. Ezekiel Elliott didn't travel with the team this week for disciplinary reasons. He's out. Zeke might be done. He might, his tenure for his return and tenure with the Cowboys might just be done. It would not be that crazy. Dowdle's still not a must start, though. Dalvin Cook is going to mix in. Dowdle's going to mix in. And Hunter Luepke has had games where he's led this team in snap share in the backfield. So you can't start these guys. You can't start any of the running backs in this matchup. You got to start Lamb. You got to start Dak. Jake Ferguson's startable as well. He was in a really frustrating role last week. He had 6 targets. He had 8 targets, 6 catches, 23 yards. He only had 16 air yards. He was averaging 2 air yards per target. Ridiculous stuff in this role for Jake Ferguson. For those of you guys that were watching closely last week, basically every single target Jake Ferguson got was a screen pass or right at the line of scrimmage where he had no chance to get any yards. They got to get him in a different role than that. He still has not scored a touchdown yet. This season, Jake Ferguson, he's the 5th most catches. He has not scored a touchdown. He's startable, but he's more of a floor play than a ceiling play with how he's being used right now. Tolbert's definitely an interesting sleeper for the flex position. He's still out there running a lot of routes, not seeing significant target share, though. Again, this game is the highest over-under, so I think Tolbert's an interesting flex option, but not a must-start by any means. So we're starting CeeDee Lamb. We're starting Dak. None of these other guys really need to be started. I had Baker Mayfield really low because the matchup versus the Chiefs is not great. Still has all the receiver injuries. There's also going to be some rain in that game. I do not think Baker Mayfield is a must-start this week over a lot of different guys. I would play Flacco over him, Kirk Cousins over him. I'd gladly play Caleb Williams over him. I'd play Darnold, Kyler, Nix, Burrow, Dak, Mahomes, all over him. And then obviously all the tier 1 guys. But I'm still playing Baker over guys like Jared Goff, guys like Matthew Stafford, Tua, Derek Carr, Winston, Herbert. So he's not a must-bench in all situations. But yeah, I'm really not that interested in Baker Mayfield this week, despite a good matchup, good game last week. This is not the same matchup he has this week versus last week. All right, onto the Falcons side of the ball. Plenty of guys you need to be starting on the Atlanta Falcons. Bijan Robinson being one of them. He's a top 3 running back option this week. Could easily finish this week as the running back 1. Let me go to the running back ranks here again. Switch this up to the running back ranks. We're almost at the start sit segment of the live stream, guys. Appreciate everyone in this live stream right now. We're going to get to a ton of start sit questions during this live stream. Hundreds. We're going game by game right now to talk through what to expect in each game, give some high-level takes on every single relevant fantasy player in each game before we go to the start sit segment in the live. We've gone through the Commanders, Giants, we've gone through the Broncos, Ravens, we've gone through the Dolphins, Bills, we've gone through the Raiders, Bengals, we got through the Cowboys. Now we're on to the Falcons side of this game. The Falcons, again, this actually just saw this line move. It was at 3 when I talked about the Cowboys. Now it's at 3.5 towards the Falcons. So this line's moving towards the Atlanta Falcons. People losing optimism for the Dallas Cowboys. Falcons are obviously been the better team this season. They're also at home. The Cowboys have really struggled against the run. They rank third worst versus running backs this season. Bijan's an absolute smash play. Tyler Algier has some upside this week too. Bijan coming off a season-high 7 catches for 43 yards too and a touchdown through the air. Bijan's going over 100 total yards today. He has a really good chance at a touchdown today. Very few better running back options. Kamara and Kyren Williams, the only 2 running backs I have ranked ahead of Bijan this week. But all guys in the same tier 1. That's the end of tier 1 for me. Bijan, Kyren, Kamara. End of list. Kirk Cousins, definitely startable this week. I think Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, I'd probably start over Kirk. Kirk Cousins obviously coming off a massive game versus the Bucs. Guys, basically all of the points for Kirk Cousins this season came against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has over 750 passing yards and 8 touchdowns just versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season. Insane stuff. Truly insane stuff. Over 60 fantasy points versus the Bucs. He has not had a single other game this season over 17.5 fantasy points. This is a good matchup, though, versus the Cowboys. It's a comparable matchup to that Bucs matchup. So there's definitely a ceiling here for Kirk Cousins. He obviously doesn't run it all, and I do expect the Falcons to have a lot of success running the ball, which is part of the reason I don't have Kirk quite as high as you might expect. But he's still a good start. I still think Kirk Cousins is right up in that tier 3 of quarterbacks. Really between really from Bo Nix through Kirk Cousins is that tier 3. Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Sam Darnold, Joe Flacco, Kirk Cousins. I put those all those guys in tier 3. I think you could argue all of those guys in the rankings for all those guys all day. If the Cowboys offense is able to keep this game close, though, Kirk's not a bad option. Drake London has to be started. Darnell Mooney is a good option this week. This is not a bad spot for Darnell Mooney. He's got a good floor-ceiling combination. I feel decent starting Darnell Mooney. He's not a must-start, but he's back in wide receiver 2. There's not many guys with a better floor-ceiling combination than Darnell Mooney. Kyle Pitts, he's definitely startable. I'm hesitant to call him a must-start. He's coming off his best game, one of his best games of his career, maybe the best game of his career for fantasy. He had 2 touchdowns, and I think it was the only career game with 2 touchdowns. One of them was arguably a fumble at the goal line, like what we saw from Malachi Corley on Thursday night. He only had 4 catches, though. He had an 18% target share. His snap share was actually the lowest of the season. He played less than half the snaps last week. Did Kyle Pitts. His route participation and snap share were the lowest of the season for Kyle Pitts last week. He just had 2 massive catches, 2 long touchdowns. Now we get the Cowboys, who have been top 10 versus tight ends this season. I would play Taysom Hill over Kyle Pitts this week. I would. And then that's it, really, for the Falcons start-sit decisions. Really, Darnell Mooney's the only tough one. Kyle Pitts is kind of a tough one, too, in certain spots. I would play Cade Otton over Kyle Pitts. I would play David Njoku over Kyle Pitts. I would play Evan Ingram, Sam Laporta, and Taysom Hill over Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts versus TJ Hawkinson, that was pretty close. We'll get to TJ Hawkinson. I do think Hawkinson's in a pretty good spot this week. Pollard or Brian Robinson. Yeah, I'd probably go Pollard there. There was some skepticism about Tony Pollard's potential to play this week. I don't think he practiced at all. But it sounds like he's going to play. Sounds like we're going to see Tony Pollard this week. Any start-sits with this game specifically? I do have 3 or 4 free player props for us today. Bo Nix or Love. Yeah, so we're benching Jordan Love. We're going to get to that Packers game. That's in the late window. We're almost through the early window here. Let's hop to the Saints-Panthers game, because a lot of Saints-Panthers stuff to talk through for sure. So first of all, if you weren't here earlier in the live stream, let me switch over to the tight end ranks here again. I'll switch to the tight end ranks here on the YouTube live too. It was National Tight End Day last week, one week ago from today, and today it is National Taysom Hill Day. So happy National Taysom Hill Day to all those who celebrate. Taysom Hill is a good starter this week for fantasy. I'm playing him in the flex in some deeper leagues. I play him over Kyle Pitts in the tight end slot. I think there's some difficult tight end start-sit decisions with Taysom Hill. If you got Sam Laporta, That one's pretty close, especially with the weather we're going to talk about in that Packers game here coming up in a second. I think Taysom Hill over Laporte is a fine decision. I think I'd probably go Evan Ingram, Njoku, McBride, Otten, Kelsey, and Bowers over Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill has a really high ceiling in this game. There is no Kendre Miller. There is no Jamal Williams. Taysom Hill is the running back too in this matchup. And guys, we don't see Alvin Kamara play every snap. That's just not the role that Kamara's in. He's played around 55% of the snaps in back-to-back weeks. He's going to get a lot of work. He's going to get a lot of carries. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's actually had more targets. Kamara has had more targets than carries in his last 2 games. 18 targets, 17 carries for Kamara in his last 2 games. Taysom Hill could get half the carries in this game, would not be that crazy. And they're playing the Panthers, the second worst run defense in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers, they've allowed the 3rd most rushing yards and the most rushing touchdowns in the NFL this season. So yeah, you got to feel pretty good about Taysom Hill, who you get to play in the tight end slot, even though he's really a running back playing against the Panthers. Really good chance at a touchdown, really good chance at some rushing yards, and he obviously can get some catches potentially too. But Taysom's in a good spot. And Kamara obviously has to be started himself. He's the running back 1 this week. There's no running backs I'd rather play than Kamara this week versus the Panthers. Chris Olave also has to be started, a must-start wide receiver. Olave is not playing alongside Rashid Shaheed anymore. His first game without Shaheed, he had a 37% target share. And now Derek Carr is back. And the Panthers are not a scary matchup for any position. The receivers, the quarterbacks, the running backs, the tight ends, none of these guys are in bad matchups this week. So you're starting Kamara, you're starting Olave 100%. I don't think there's going to be a single start sit today where I tell someone to bench Olave. Definitely, we shouldn't see Kamara at all. And then Taysom Hill is a good start. It's Taysom Hill day. We feel good about Taysom Hill, at least his ceiling. The floor is still a little scary, just like it is for most of the tight ends, but the ceiling is there. There's a multiple touchdown ceiling for Taysom Hill in this game versus the Panthers. There's a 50-plus rushing yard upside for Taysom Hill in this game versus the Panthers. I would go Otten over Njoku, yeah. Otten gets the Chiefs. They've not been good versus tight ends this season. Otten has clearly seeing an increased role with the wide receiver injuries going on there. All right, so that's the Saints. On the Panthers side of the ball, we're going to see some Jalen Coker questions today. He does project as the best wide receiver for the Panthers today. Chuba Hubbard's a good start versus the Saints. The Saints overall have been decent versus running backs, but they've really been bad the last 3 games versus the running backs. J.K. Dobbins had 17, Javonte Williams had 26, Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving a few weeks back. They smashed for over 50 combined points. Chuba Hubbard is going to see a big role again today without Jonathan Brooks activated. Jonathan Brooks might not be back till week 12 potentially. They got a bye week, I think, in there. I've been saying it since the beginning with Jonathan Brooks, who I've been an advocate to go trade for in fantasy. You don't think about Jonathan Brooks until the fantasy playoffs. The whole reason you're getting Jonathan Brooks is for the fantasy football playoffs. That has not changed. We always knew there was a long potential timeline for him to play. Obviously, the Panthers are having a bad season, so that could definitely be impacting the Brooks timeline as well. Hop to the wide receiver rankings here as we talk about Jalen Coker. By the way, McLaurin accidentally left off of these wide receiver rankings. He should be right above Zay Flowers, DJ Moore for the wide receiver rankings, Terry McLaurin. All right, on to Jalen Coker. So Jalen Coker had a good game last week. This is a undrafted rookie wide receiver out of Holy Cross that we're talking about here with Jalen Coker. Xavier Legette, he was questionable for this game. He's going to be active. Coker's going to active. He's going to be playing out of the slot though versus the Saints. The Saints are without multiple starters in the secondary. The Saints have been torched out of the slot this season. There's reason to be optimistic about Jalen Coker this week. 4 catches, 78 yards, and a TD last week. Played 70% of snaps. Had a 17% target share. We should see similar usage this week. He had almost a third of their air yards last week too. Has some deep targets potential. I don't think you need to rush to start Jalen Coker, but he is a decent sleeper this week for the flex or for your second or third wide receiver slot. I would start him over Xavier Legette in this matchup. The top 2 receivers this week for the Panthers are Coker and Legette. David Moore, definitely not a guy you can trust. Pat or Love this week. Yeah, it's Mahomes. Definitely over Love. We're going to get to that Chiefs game at the end here, but Mahomes is a must start this week in most spots. All right, that's the Panthers side of the ball. Miles Sanders, by the way, he had 7 catches last week. 7 catches. His line this week is at 1.5 receptions. I would not rush to start him either, but definitely an interesting deep option in PPR leagues if you're desperate for a running back. The Panthers are 7-point underdogs at home in this one. Bryce Young is going to be starting again. I probably would take the 7 points there for the Panthers at home, but Saints should be able to handle business there. And again, start Taysom Hill if you're struggling at tight end. We got the Chargers and Browns game next. This is one of the closer projected games that we've talked about so far. I actually think the closest projected game we've discussed so far. This has one of the lowest over-unders of all the games, but only 1 point spread. The Chargers are favored by 1 in Cleveland. Justin Herbert has the healthiest wide receiver room he's had all season. DJ Chark is active for this game for the first time. Ladd McConkey's been balling. He's really a borderline must start right now. I have him in tier 4. I think there's an argument to put him in tier 3. Like JSN versus Ladd McConkey, it's close. There's no DK Metcalf this week. But with how Ladd's been playing, I wouldn't knock you for going Ladd over JSN. He had 29 points last week versus the Saints. By the way, this is part of the reason people are excited about Jalen Coker. Ladd McConkey balled last week, 29 points versus the Saints defense. 6 catches, 111 yards, and 2 TDs in that game. The Browns secondary has not been great this season. They ranked 7th worst versus receivers this season. They've allowed the 26th. They ranked 26th in receiving yards. That's the 6th most yards per game to receivers so far this season. Ladd is definitely a good wide receiver 2 option. We've seen Zay Flowers, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith all do pretty well versus the Browns over the last 3 weeks. J.K. Dobbins is not a guy I feel super excited about, but the volume should still be there for Dobbins. He's coming off a 17-point game. He had an 81% snap share last week. That was the highest of the season. He had a 23% target share last week. That was the highest of his season too. So Dobbins is startable, but not a must start. Pick 2 or Mondre Mooney or Courtland Sutton. Yeah, I would bench Mondre there. We're going to get to that Pats game here coming up next. But don't feel good about Mondre over Mooney or Sutton in a PPR league. All these other receivers, though, everyone else really in this team can't be started. I feel good about Cameron Dicker this week. And the Chargers actually rank as the number 1 defense this week versus Jameis Winston and the Browns. So I feel good about the defense and kicker for the Chargers. Got to start McConkey. Got to start J.K. Dobbins in a bunch of spots. I don't think Herbert's a must start. This is a run-first team. Wants to be a run-first team. Almost all these games for the Browns have been pretty gross games scoring-wise, too. Last week was a little bit more exciting than usual with Winston starting. Don't think you need to start Jameis Winston this week in pretty much all situations. David Njoku's a must start. Cedric Tillman, there's going to be a lot of Cedric Tillman questions. He's had back-to-back good games. Back-to-back games over 18 fantasy points. Back-to-back games with at least 7 catches and 80 yards. He looks like the wide receiver 1 for the Browns all of a sudden, just leapfrogged Jerry Jeudy after the Amari Cooper trade. But this is a tougher matchup than we've seen for Cedric Tillman this season. The Chargers have been good versus receivers, 7th best versus receivers this season. Definitely a little bit nervous for Cedric Tillman in this one. There's a bunch of receivers I would still prefer to start over Cedric Tillman. I would start Calvin Ridley over him, for example. Brian Robinson Jr., for example. I think I'd probably go B-Rob over Ridley if I had to make that call. Anything about Brian Thomas? Yeah, so we're going to get to the Jaguars here momentarily after the Pats-Titans. Talking to the Browns right now. But Brian Thomas Jr., I think, is just a risky, high-ceiling, low-floor option this week with the injury he's dealing with. Does sound like he's going to play, though. And Gabe Davis is out. Christian Kirk's out. A fully healthy Brian Thomas Jr. would be a smash start in this matchup. So we'll get to that. Nick Chubb is startable this week. Jerome Ford's back. Going to be interesting to see the usage between Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford. But Nick Chubb's usage went up a decent bit last week in his second game back. 61% snap percentage, 70% rush share. This was like close to what we used to see in terms of usage from Nick Chubb, around 60% of the snaps, 60 to 65%, around 60 to 70% of the rush share. Not a huge target role, but another tough matchup here for Nick Chubb. Chargers ranked 2nd best versus running backs this season. We have not seen very many big games for the running backs versus the Chargers. Kamara only had 18, Connor only had 17. Those are the 2 biggest games we've seen versus the Chargers at running back this season. So Nick Chubb, low ceiling, high floor option because he should see at least 12 touches in this game. We have not seen an efficient Nick Chubb game yet either. Week 1, his first game back, or week 7, a couple weeks ago, 2 yards per carry. Last week, 3.2 yards per carry. He's been incredibly inefficient so far. I don't want to start Jeudy. I don't want to start Elijah Moore. I don't want to start Jerome Ford. And Njoku is really the only must start on this offense this week. Terry McLaurin should be on this list. He should be right ahead of the JSN Michael Pittman tier. All right, let's get to this next game. Let's switch back to the quarterbacks here. Brian Thomas or Calvin Ridley, that one's a close one. So let's go to the Titans here. So Calvin Ridley coming off his best game of the season. Second best game. I would argue his best game. I mean, he had 24.7 points back in week 2, but that was partially because of rushing touchdown. He had 10 catches and 143 yards. Most of that came in the first half against the Lions. He was questionable this week too. He's going to play. He was wide receiver 5 last week without a touchdown. Saw 40% target share. Saw almost half the air. He's over 45% air yard share in 3 straight games. I mean, the air yards have been incredible for him. Mason Rudolph looks a little bit more functional than Will Levis. I think Ridley versus Brian Thomas Jr. is a close one. Let's actually do this comparison quick on the YouTube Live. By the way, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, come to the YouTube Live. It is a better viewing experience. I'm telling you. Link is right in the TikTok bio. Yeah, I think I would go Ridley over BTJ this week if I had to make that call. Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley, pretty decent starts this week. Pollard was questionable this week too with a foot injury. He's expected to play. Julius Chestnut is his backup. I think they called up one other running back too. Yeah, Joshua Kelly. Maybe we'll get some run, but Pollard should see a really big role versus the Patriots defense that ranks dead last versus running backs this season. No defense has allowed more fantasy points per game to running backs than the Patriots. They rank dead last in yards. They rank second to worst in touchdowns. Bigsby had 24 points. Mixon had 27 points. Jordan Mason went for 24. I mean, we haven't seen very many bad games, like really bad games, at least, versus the Patriots this season from the running back position. Tony Pollard is definitely a pretty good start. Pittman or BTJ is really tough, I think. Yeah, I'd go Pittman, I think. I think I'd go Pittman in that matchup over BTJ with the injury. And then no other Titans player is really startable. Tyler Boyd may be an interesting sleeper, but it's really just Ridley and Pollard. I'm glad we don't need to talk about what it might be like with Pollard also out and Julius Chestnut and what that means for fantasy. But don't be shocked if Chestnut ends up scoring. All right, we've got the Patriots side of the ball. It similar to Tyrone Tracy, Drake May progresses through the concussion protocol rather quickly. He's not going to miss a game. He's going to be starting this week in Tennessee. This game, the Pats are 3-point underdogs versus the Titans in Tennessee. Drake May, really not a must start. An interesting sleeper, maybe you could argue, with the rushing role that he has. He had 46 rushing yards last game and a rushing touchdown. He only played half the game and had 11.5 points, was tracking to go over 20 points in that game. Ramondre Stevenson, he's kind of a risky but decent option at running back. He had 23.5 points last time out versus the Jets. He scored twice, though. He was not efficient in that game, 2.4 yards per carry. But there's just no one going to steal work, really, from Ramondre on this team. Antonio Gibson's been horrible. And JaMychal Hasty's just not going to get a significant workload despite him being the most efficient running back really over the last 3 weeks for the Patriots. So Ramondre's probably the closest to a must-start you can find on the Pats. Not a terrible matchup for him versus the Titans. No one else on this team you can really start. Javon Baker is supposedly going to be active in this game. I mean, they have 6 different receivers that realistically could lead the team in targets, and it wouldn't be that shocking. Douglas, Booty, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, KJ Osborne, and Javon Baker all are probably running routes today for the Patriots. And then on top of that, you got Hunter Henry. And the running backs will get targets. And Drake May will run. So none of these receivers can be trusted at all. This game has the lowest over-under of the week, too. So try to avoid this game if you can. Mondre, Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, really the only 3 guys you want to be starting in this game. Vikings or Eagles defense? Yeah, I'd probably go with the Eagles defense there. Let's get to this Eagles game because there's a lot of Eagles questions, a lot of Jags questions that I'm seeing. The Eagles start sits are easy. I mean, you're starting the big 4 here. You're starting Jalen Hurts. You're starting A.J. Brown. You're starting Saquon. You're starting Devontae Smith. We don't even need to talk about this much. I think it's well known how bad the Jags defense is. This defense is awful. At least 2 of these 3 guys, if not all 3, A.J. Brown, Saquon, and Devontae Smith, will smash this week. The Jags play a lot of man coverage. That's not going to work versus A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I mean, they're going to get crushed in this game. Jalen Hurts, by the way, he's coming off a 40-point fantasy game. He had 35 points last week. He scored 3 rushing touchdowns and threw a touchdown. He's got 5 rushing touchdowns in his last 2 games now. In this matchup versus the Jags have not allowed a rushing touchdown. They've allowed 1 rushing touchdown to quarterbacks this season, but they've allowed the 8th most rushing yards. They rank dead last in passing touchdowns, 4th worst in passing yards, 320 passing yards per game versus the Jags this season. On the Jaguar side of the ball, and the Eagles are an interesting defense versus the Jags. The Jaguars, basically their entire team was questionable this week. Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne, Gabe Davis, and Brian Thomas Jr. were all questionable heading into this game. I mean, there was a chance we were going to see an entire practice squad basically starting for the Jags this week. Tank Bigsby, ETN, both looking like they're going to be active this week. I got Bigsby projected ahead of ETN. I don't feel good starting either of them in this game. I think Bigsby and ETN are benches this week. Really risky situation for them. I have Tank Bigsby as one of my week 9 must benches. I think he's really risky. He is a touchdown-dependent running back. We've seen him in 2 different games score 2 touchdowns against the Colts and the Pats. Those were both one of the 2 of the worst run defenses in the league. Pats are the worst run defense in the league, at least in terms of fantasy points allowed. He's not going to score multiple touchdowns here versus the Eagles. ETN's going to be active in this game. That's not good for him. Both likely to play. I think both are really risky fantasy options. Bigsby's not catching passes in this game. Evan Ingram, borderline must start in all leagues. There's only 5 tight ends I've ranked ahead of Evan Ingram this week. Those are Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce, Kate Otten, Trey McBride, David Njoku. End of list. I'm not playing Taysom Hill over Evan Ingram. There's no Christian Kirk. He's out for the season. Gabe Davis is also out in this game. And Brian Thomas Jr. is also dealing with an injury in this game. I'm pretty shocked that it sounds like Brian Thomas Jr. is going to play. The initial report about Brian Thomas Jr.'s injury was a multi-week, week-to-week injury. I thought he was going to miss 2 to 3 weeks. And maybe not come back till after the Jaguars bye in week 12. Maybe we weren't going to see Brian Thomas Jr. till week 13. That was my initial read based on the reports we were getting about the Brian Thomas Jr. injury. That's good for Evan Ingram too. Evan Ingram could easily lead this team in target share this week. He had a 16% target share last week after back-to-back 25% target shares the 2 weeks before that. He's averaging 5 catches a game. Don't forget, Evan Ingram almost broke the all-time reception record for tight ends last season. So Brian Thomas Jr. chest injury, likely to play. He was upgraded to day-to-day status this week. Gabe Davis is out. Christian Kirk is out. Man, I mean, he gets the Eagles. They're 7-point underdogs in this game. Pretty high over-under. It's very hard to bench Brian Thomas Jr. with all those variables. It's just the injury that gives a little bit more risk for BTJ. How high is your risk tolerance? Because the ceiling is there for Brian Thomas Jr. This is not a bad matchup for Brian Thomas Jr. The Eagles secondary has not been great this season. They rank 22nd in terms of points allowed. They're allowing 37 points per game to receivers. And what other receiver is going to score points in this game? It's what Parker Washington is next up. It's going to be Brian Thomas Jr., Evan Ingram, and then Parker Washington is the next best receiver on this team. Tim Jones and Parker Washington are who is behind Brian Thomas Jr. in this game. So we could see a reasonable target share for BTJ, assuming he's fully healthy, which is an assumption you got to make. So yeah, the ceiling's definitely there. I mean, he's got a top 10 ceiling this week, Brian Thomas Jr. Taysom versus Madison. Yeah, I'm going Taysom over Madison for sure. We're sitting Kincaid because there's no ceiling for Kincaid. He's not been over 15 points a single time. I mean, what is the ceiling for Kincaid? I'd go Devonta over Terry McLaurin too. All right, so that's the Jaguars. So Brian Thomas Jr., he's an high upside start and just a little bit of risk with the injury and potential re-injury risk. But there's no Gabe Davis, there's no Christian Kirk, so that definitely raises the ceiling for Brian Thomas Jr. a lot. So we're starting Evan Ingram. We're starting Brian Thomas Jr. No one else in this team, I think, can be started. Nobody. All right, on to the next game. We got just a few more games here to get to. We're into the late window now. This Jags-Eagles game was the start of the late window. The Pats-Titans game was the end of the early window. So just to give you guys a sense of what to expect today. We got in the early window today. We got the Commanders, Giants, Broncos, Ravens, Dolphins, Bills, Raiders, Bengals, Cowboys, Falcons, Saints, Panthers, Chargers, Browns, Pats, Titans. That's the early window. In the late window, we got the Jags, Eagles, the Bears, Cardinals, the Lions, Packers, the Rams, Seahawks. 4 games there. We already got through one of them. Let's go to the Bears and Cardinals game next. Some pretty difficult start sits, I think, for the Bears. The Bears are some difficult wide receiver start sits every single week because there's 3 of them. They're all playing a decent amount. And it's very rare. I don't think we've seen a single game this season where all 3 receivers were good starts. DeAndre Swift, he's a must start in this game. He has not had a bad game, I think, for his last 4. It's been over a month since we've seen a bad game from DeAndre Swift. He's been over 18.5 PPR fantasy points for 4 straight games. He scored a touchdown in 4 straight games. He didn't have a single catch last week, still had 19 fantasy points. He's going to get some catches in this game too versus the Cardinals. This game should be close. The Cardinals are 2-point favorites at home versus the Bears in this one. DeAndre Swift is really a must start. He played 73% of snaps. Last week, that was a season high. Roschon Johnson still coming in and stealing some goal line carries, but it doesn't really matter. DeAndre Swift is still in a good enough role that he has to be started in almost all situations, especially PPR. Switch back to the running back ranks here. Caleb Williams is startable in this game. I think I got him in tier 3, right in that Kirk Cousins tier, maybe right below Kirk Cousins. He only had 9 points, 10 points last week. I mean, what a brutal loss for the Bears last week versus the Commanders. Absolutely insane. You have your defender celebrating before the play just to tip it to Noah Brown for the Hail Mary touchdown loss. I do think this is a bounce back spot for the Bears. Caleb Williams was heating up a little bit before their bye week. He had 23.6 versus the Panthers. Then he had 29.6 versus the Jags. Then the bye. Then he only had less than 10 points versus the Commanders. But this Cardinals matchup is more similar to that Panthers-Jaguars matchup in terms of just how bad the Cardinals have been versus quarterbacks this season. So Caleb Williams is definitely an interesting option this week. You got to expect the whole Bears team to come out ready to play after what happened last week. Tua and Herbert both went under 15 versus this defense the last couple of weeks. I think the floor is right around 15 points, though, for Caleb in this game. So that makes him a decent start. DeAndre Swift, must start. DJ Moore is definitely the preferred receiver option in this matchup. He's had back-to-back games with 6 or fewer fantasy points. He's out there every snap, though. He's still, I think, the highest upside play among the receivers. Keenan Allen, he had under 6 points last week, too. He's also out there every single play. He had a 32% target share last week and only had 5.9 fantasy points. He's definitely a decent start this week also. And then Rome Odunze can be started too. He actually had more points than the other 2 receivers last week, only 3 catches, 41 yards. He's playing a little less in terms of snap share, but 27% target share wasn't bad. He had the air yards last week. He led the team in air yards, 40% of the air yards for Rome Odunze last week. I still believe Rome Odunze is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL, just period. I still think there's a ceiling here for Odunze in this matchup too. All 3 receivers are startable. It's unlikely all 3 do well. Cole Kmet, he's fallen down the ranks a little bit. Only 4.4 points last week. Only had 1 catch. He had 1 target, 4.5% target share. This is the floor for Cole Kmet. Play Taysom Hill over Cole Kmet. On the Cardinals side of the ball, Kyler Murray has been a headache in terms of start-sit decisions every single week. He's not been consistent, but he's been over 21 points now in 3 of his last 4 games. He had his first game over with at least 2 passing touchdowns back since week 2 of the season last week in a tough matchup versus the Dolphins. This is not a much worse matchup than what he had last week versus the Dolphins. This game's projected to be close. Kyler Murray startable. Kyler Murray versus Bo Nix, close call. Really close call. I would lean Bo Nix, though, over Kyler Murray. Marvin Harrison Jr., similar thing. Him and James Conner. I think James Conner is an easier start than Marv, but Marv bounced back last week. He was in a better role. They used him in a better role last week. It was not all deep targets down the field, vertical, similar routes as what he was running weeks 1 through 7. They mixed up his route tree a little bit, and it clearly helped. He had a 21% target share. Marv is definitely startable in this game. Got him ranked right at the end of the top 30 receivers. I think I would go Tracy over Jacobs. Yeah, I think that's reasonable with the matchup Jacobs has. We're going to get to that Packers game here in a second. Trey McBride's a must start. He's in arguably, I actually don't think it's even that arguable. He's just in the best role for tight ends, period. He's the highest target share in the NFL among tight ends. He has the most air yards among tight ends. His total targets rank second. I think probably only behind Brock Bowers. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Jaden Reed. I probably would go Marv over Reed. I don't know if my rankings even agree with that. I think that's how I would play it, though. We're going to get to that Packers game and why I feel that way in a second. I'm pretty nervous about the Packers receivers this week. Jaden Reed definitely has a ceiling, but so does Marvin Harrison Jr. He's got a ceiling too. Better matchup for the Packers receivers on paper, but we'll see how the game environment plays out once we talk about the weather in that game coming up here in a second. All right, so the Cardinals are 2-point favorites. I kind of think the Bears win this game. They're 2-point underdogs in Arizona. I think the Bears bounce back and win this game. All right, we got the Packers and the Lions. Let's talk about this one next. This is the only Weatherman Sam report of the day. We'll get to that here in a second. I don't think you want to start Jordan Love this week because of the weather. Maybe let's start with the weather report, actually. Let's get to it. We got the Weatherman Sam update. Weatherman Sam here for you guys all season long. We have not had too much super significant weather this season. Let me go back to the QB ranks here. switch over to the QB ranks here again. We're almost in the start sit segment of the live, by the way. We're going to get to hundreds of start sits in the comments here coming up momentarily. Jordan Love, I really think, is a bench this week, though. He's coming off the injury. He's playing, which was not a given, a few days ago. He's tracking to play, barring a setback, in the next 24 hours. That was the most recent report. Last week, though, he was playing, and you could tell he was playing through an injury. And I think it could be something similar this week. But then on top of that, you got some concerning weather in this game, this Packers-Lions game. It's going to be heavy rain throughout the game. There's also going to be some sustained winds in this Packers game. Wind gusts as high as 30 miles an hour. This is very similar to the Bills-Seahawks report last week. This is actually more concerning than that game, though. If you remember back to that game, it was basically the exact same report, but the wind gusts were up to 25 miles an hour. 25 miles an hour is the threshold of extreme concern when it comes to passing. And this is not sustained winds at 30. Sustained winds at 30, you should be benching, all the receivers, all the quarterbacks in this game. This is wind gusts as high as 30. So there's going to be moments in this game where it's really difficult to throw the ball deep. And it's going to be downpouring rain on top of that. Downpouring rain without any wind, I don't really care. That's what we might see in the Chiefs-Bucks game, by the way, tomorrow night. I don't really care. Not that worried about it because there's not going to be any wind in that game. It's the wind that I really am concerned about. And then you add on top of that the rain, and it makes it just a little bit worse. So expect these teams to skew a little bit more towards the short passing game and the run game than you typically would expect. So yeah, don't start Jordan Love. Jordan Love's dealing with an injury and dealing with 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts and downpouring rain. No thanks for Jordan Love for me this week. I think there's plenty of other good quarterback options to go start. I would start Kyler over him. I would start Bo Nix over him. I think Kirk Cousins is a good start over him. I think Sam Darnold and Joe Flacco are starts over him. I think Dak and Burrow are much better than Jordan Love this week. Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, I would start those guys over him. I even think Jared Goff might be a slightly better option than Jordan Love, just given the injury concern, because there's the weather concern and the injury concern for Jordan Love. Does Jordan Love play the whole game? And if he does play the whole game, which I would expect, what percentage of health is he really at? I mean, last week he did not look fully healthy before he got out of the game. So I think Jordan Love's a bench. And all these receivers come with additional risk because of all of these factors. Jaden Reed has an intriguing ceiling. Guys, the Lions are allowing the most points per game to receivers this season. So I get the excitement to want to start these guys. We have not seen a ceiling game from Jaden Reed since week 4 versus the Vikings. 27 points in that game. He had 33 back in week 1. We haven't seen him go over 15 points, though, since week 4. He's got back-to-back games with only 2 catches. The ceiling's there for Reed in this game, but the floor is extremely low. I mean, we've seen the floor the last couple of weeks. And Romeo Doubs, his floor has been better. He's been over 10 points in 3 straight games. I have some concern for him too, though, given the weather and the injury risk for Jordan Love. And then Christian Watson just can't be started. I mean, he can't. He's a deep threat playing in a game that's going to be harder to throw the ball deep with 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts and downpouring rain. So Christian Watson's definitely a must bench. And Dobbs and Reed come with more risk this week. And Tucker Kraft also, he maybe is that shorter intermediate passing range. That's good. With this type of weather, I still don't think he's a must start. He only had 11% target share last week, 12% the week before that. I would rather play Taysom Hill than Tucker Kraft. The Lions have been good versus tight ends as well. And then Dontavian Wicks also just can't really be started. It's really Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs, the only 2 receivers you can consider starting. Josh Jacobs is definitely startable. He's also dealing with an injury. He's playing through it. Ankle injury, expected to play. He was running back 3 last week versus the Jags. He doesn't get the Jags this week, though. The Lions break top 5 versus running backs this season. Josh Jacobs definitely still startable, though. That's the Weatherman Sam report. Moderate concern. Moderate concern for this game. Downpouring rain, 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts is not a great environment for passing. All right, on to the Lions side of this game. So we're benching Jordan Love. We're playing Josh Jacobs in most spots. We're benching Jaden Reed if we can, but the ceiling is definitely still there. We're benching Romeo Doubs if we can, but I think the floor is still there for him. It's not like they won't throw at all in this game. It's just going to be more difficult to throw it deep, which is why you can't start Christian Watson. I don't feel great about Tucker Kraft or Dontavian Wicks. For the Lions side, obviously, we're starting Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown, regardless of the weather. You got to start both these guys. Jared Goff, I would start him over Jordan Love. There's not very many quarterbacks, though, I'm starting Jared Goff over. I'd rather play Baker Mayfield, Caleb Williams, Kirk Cousins. I think even Geno is potentially startable over Jared Goff. Joe Flacco, Sam Darnold, Kyler Murray, Bo Nix. I'd play Achane over Neighbors, I think, in the flex if I had to choose. David Montgomery's definitely startable in this game, too. This weather should skew more towards a David Montgomery game than usual. Sam Laporta, he's starting to heat up a tiny bit. He had his best game of the season last week on National Tight End Day, 17 points. He had 6 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. I think did he throw a touchdown too, if I recall? Or he almost had 2 touchdowns, I believe. Played 80% of the snaps, 33% target share for Laporta last week. They didn't throw the ball that much. But Laporta is definitely startable in this game, even given the weather report. If anything, this could skew more targets towards Amon-Ra and Laporta and less targets towards all these other guys. The shallow targets are going to be more likely to happen with the wind and the rain in the Lions and Packers game. I think the start sits for the Lions are pretty straightforward. I think Sam Laporta versus Taysom Hill, super close this week. Guys, if you're watching live on YouTube, smash the like button. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. We are still just getting started in this live stream. We're almost through every single game. We only got 3 more games to talk through: the Rams, Seahawks, the Colts, Vikings, and then tomorrow night's game, the Bucs and the Chiefs. And then we are going to go through the free player props of the day. I think I have, is it 3 or 4? I have 4 free player props for us today. 4 different ones. I feel pretty good about all of them. And then we'll get to the start sit segment of the live stream. Got the DraftKings lineup ready to rock and roll as well. All right, let's get to this next game, the Rams and the Seahawks. These games have had a history of being pretty wild and not what you would expect. They haven't played each other this season yet. They play again in week 18. Kyron Williams ranks as running back 2, has to be started in the best role really in the NFL among running backs. Puka Nacua, he hurt that same injury, that same knee. He tweaked it again this week. Sounds like he's going to play through it. So he's not a bench. You kind of have to trust Puka. And I was on this live the last Thursday night telling a lot of people to bench Puka. That ended up being wrong. I'm pretty risk averse for guys coming off injuries in their first game back, because I like to see what their role is going to look like. The role looked pretty good for Puka last week. He only played 57% of snaps, but he had a 27% target share. He saw 40% of the air yards for the Rams last week versus the Vikings. 7 catches, 106 yards. He looked fine. And he looked better than Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp actually played less than Puka Nacua last week. Possible that flips this week with Puka Nacua re-injuring his knee a little bit. But he's expected to play. You kind of have to start Puka. In almost all situations, you got to start Puka and Kupp in this game. They're both top 12 wide receiver options in this game. You have to start them. So Kyron, Puka, and Kupp all must start. I don't really want to start Stafford. He's startable with these receivers back, but I don't really want to force it with the matchup versus the Seahawks. Seahawks ranked 7th best versus quarterbacks this season in terms of fantasy points allowed. This game does have a pretty high over-under. The Rams are slight favorites, 1.5-point favorites in Seattle in this game. I do think the Rams take this one. On the Seahawks side of the ball, Kenneth Walker is a must-start. Jackson Smith and Jigba projects well again. There's no DK Metcalf again in this one. He had 6 catches for a nice 69 yards last week, 25% target share. The air yards weren't there. Only 49, but that was actually over half the team's air yards last week. I mean, a gross air yard game. The Rams have been a really tough matchup for receivers this season, but we have seen individual big games versus them. Jameson Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jawan Jennings had his massive game versus them. Justin Jefferson had 20. Obviously, Jay Jetta is going to go for basically 20 plus in all matchups. It's unlikely that JSN and Lockett have a big game, but one of them is capable of having a big game here. I much prefer JSN, though, over Lockett. I think I probably would go JSN over Otten if I had to make that call, seeing that one in the TikTok live. Man, Otten actually projects a bit better than JSN. Maybe it is Otten over JSN, given the matchups. I think it might be Otten over JSN. There's some tight ends you can play in the flex this week for sure. DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney. Yeah, I'd lean DJ Moore there. I have Cousins starting over Burrow. I think that's fine. I have them in a similar tier. I mean, Burrow is actually a couple tiers above. I personally would go Burrow versus the Raiders. I know T. Higgins is out, but Kirk Cousins has a ceiling too. I don't think Kirk Cousins is a bad option this week. All right, on to the other side, or actually the next game. We talked about the Rams and the Seahawks. We're on to the Colts Vikings. This is a fun game tonight. Multiple free player props coming out of this game. We'll get to those in a second. Josh Downs is a must start. You have to start Josh Downs. Let me go to the wide receiver ranks. By the way, on the wide receiver ranks, accidentally left Scary Terry out. He's a must start, though, this week. I put him probably right ahead of JSN and Zay Flowers. I'll switch to the wide receiver ranks here on the YouTube live as well. It does sound like Josh Jacobs is going to play. Yep, seeing that on the YouTube live. We're going to get to the comments here momentarily, guys. We only got 2 more games left. We got the nighttime game tonight, and then we got the Monday night game tomorrow between the Bucs and the Chiefs. So the Colts are 5-point underdogs in this game versus the Vikings. Joe Flacco is starting. The Viking secondary has been bad this season. They rank 3rd worst versus receivers this year. Josh Downs has balled in every non-Anthony Richardson game this season. He hasn't gotten under 15 points in a single one of those games. Last week with A-Rich, he went over 22 fantasy points, 109 yards, 4 catches, and a touchdown. Left wide open on a deep play. The floor is there for Downs in this game. The ceiling is there for Downs in this game, given the matchup. He's a top 10 wide receiver option. You got to start Josh Downs. Deontay is not on this list because he's not startable. And Brian Thomas Jr., I think I agree he's probably too low. We talked through Brian Thomas Jr. already on this live. I think I'd probably play him over Jaden Reed. I think I'd play him over Amari Cooper. I don't know if I'd play him over Ladd. I'd play him over Keenan and Ridley and Shakir, though. I would probably put Brian Thomas Jr. right around wide receiver 20 to 24. The ceiling is there. The reason he was low is when I had these rankings put into place, there was still a chance Brian Thomas Jr. wasn't going to play, but he's likely to play now. All right, let's get to the rest of this Colts team. So JT, Jonathan Taylor, he's a must start. Josh Downs is a must start. Flacco is startable this week. Michael Pittman, also a pretty good start this week. He's got that same matchup that Josh Downs has. He also was much better with Flacco earlier this season. All of his good games came with Flacco. He's been under 10 points in every game with Anthony Richardson. And he gets the Vikings as a 5-point underdog. So yeah, Pittman and Downs, both very good starts this week. Adonai Mitchell, he's an interesting sleeper, but not a start. So you're starting JT, you're starting Josh Downs, you're starting Pittman, and Flacco's an interesting sleeper playing on Sunday Night Football as well, as an underdog with good receivers versus a bad Viking secondary. JT also definitely gets a bump with Joe Flacco over Anthony Richardson. There's a lot of evidence out there that the rushing QBs boost the efficiency for the running backs from a yards per carry perspective. But the problem for fantasy with A-Rich and Jonathan Taylor is Jonathan Taylor doesn't get targets with Anthony Richardson. He does with Joe Flacco, though. So the target volume should go up for Jonathan Taylor in this game. And then on to the Vikings. Obviously, we're starting Justin Jefferson. Aaron Jones, the top 5 running back option. Guys, Aaron Jones is coming off a game with his best usage, I think, like arguably ever. I don't think we've ever seen Aaron Jones in a role like this, like his whole career. He had 92% snap share on Thursday night. He did not come off the field, really. Ran a route on 71% of the dropbacks. Those were both season highs. 86% rush share. That was a season high. I mean, Aaron Jones is suddenly in this workhorse role and needs to be started. Luke, how we doing? In the YouTube live, you're playing Downs over Flowers like pretty easily. There's very few receivers you can't bench for Downs. Like the only receivers really you're benching for Josh Downs are CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, Amon Ra. I'm playing all those guys over Downs, but like Olave, maybe you could start over Downs, Neighbors, London, Puka, and Kupp. I could see arguments over Downs. I'd play Downs over a bunch of those guys, though. I would play Downs over Puka. Yeah, I would. I would go Downs over Puka Nacua. All of them are top 12 receivers. Most situations, you're going to start all of these guys. Like Downs versus Devontae Smith, I think I'd go Downs there, too. All right, let's get to the last game of the week. I do expect the Colts to make this game close. I'd probably take them with the 5-point spread tonight in Minnesota. And then the last game of the week, we got the Buccaneers 9-point underdogs versus the Chiefs. I definitely would take the 9 there, but the Chiefs likely to stay undefeated in this game. Pat Mahomes, I think this is probably going to be the first game over 20 points for Pat Mahomes this season. I'm willing to expect that from Mahomes on Monday Night Football. There could be some rain in this game on Monday night, but no wind. And the rain's not even confirmed going to be, heavy rain throughout the game yet. Still a moving weather report there. But the Bucs have been so bad, guys, versus quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins had 28. Lamar had 34. Kirk Cousins again had 35. I mean, Spencer Rattler had 15 points. I mean, this is the floor for Mahomes, whatever Spencer Rattler did. And how is he not do better than what Spencer Rattler did? I mean, it's possible the Chiefs lean heavy on the run as 9-point favorites. Kareem Hunt gets a big game. He's definitely a good start this week. But yeah, you got to start Mahomes this week. This is the week for Mahomes of all weeks, given the matchup here versus the Bucs. Baker Mayfield has been able to keep games close this season. This is arguably the best matchup of the season for Mahomes from a fantasy football perspective. So yeah, you're starting Mahomes this week. Sam Darnold, Bo Nix. Show the defense rankings. Yeah, I got the defense rankings. Let me pull the defense ranks here on the TikTok Lab too. Scary Terry was accidentally left off, but he's a must start. Jerry McLaurin should be ahead of JSN on those rankings. I would go Bo Nix over Sam Darnold. Kelsey, obviously a must start. He's coming off by far his best game of the season. He balled last week. 25 fantasy points, 10 catches, 90 yards, and a TD. I still have my concerns from the fantasy football playoff perspective with Kelsey. I still think he's a trade away ahead of the fantasy trade deadline because of that. Last season, guys, he went under 10 points in all 3 fantasy football playoff weeks because they don't need to push Kelsey to the limit at the end of the NFL regular season as they gear up for another Super Bowl run in the playoffs. It's shaping up to be the same thing this year. They're about to be, 8-0, 9-0? They're about to be 8-0 after tomorrow night. They're going to lock up the 1 seed in the next month and a half. DeAndre Hopkins, a very intriguing sleeper to me this week. There were some comments from Andy Reid after the game saying they're going to get him more involved in that Juju/Rashee Rice role moving forward. He only played 32% of snaps last week, only had 3 targets. Caught 2 of those for 29. That's definitely his floor in this game. This good matchup versus the Bucs here. And Xavier Worthy, also an interesting upside flex option in this game versus the Bucs. I wouldn't knock you. I think Hopkins arguably is actually a safer floor than Worthy. Worthy maybe has a slightly higher ceiling. So we're starting Kelsey, we're starting Mahomes. Kareem Hunt's a start. Hopkins is an interesting sleeper and a guy I want to start this week. And then Xavier Worthy is an interesting ceiling. On the Bucs side of the ball, Baker Mayfield, not really a guy I'm super excited to start. He's pretty much outdone whatever I projected every single week. Like he's outdone his projection every single week. He ranked second in fantasy points per game this season. Guys, Mayfield's on an absolute tear. He's over 23 points in 5 straight games. But he still is dealing without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin. Now he gets the Chiefs. He has not had this tough of a matchup since those injuries. Chiefs ranked top 10 versus quarterbacks. They ranked number 1 versus running backs. You can't start Bucky Irving or Rachaad White this week. Rachaad White's a slightly better start because he's likely to be in the better receiving role. But the Chiefs have stopped every single running back they played this entire season. This is the worst possible matchup for running backs. This is the worst possible matchup for Bucky Irving specifically, who's more in that early down rushing role than the receiving role, like Rachaad White. Cade Otton, he's pretty much a must start. Unless you have Kelsey or Bowers, you're starting Otton. Cade Otton's role is massive right now. He's not coming off the field. He's seen over 20% target share in back-to-back games. He's had 10 targets in back-to-back games. He's caught 17 of those. 20 targets in the last 2 games. He caught 17 of those for 181 yards and 2 TDs. I mean, how are you not starting that versus the Chiefs, who ranked bottom 10 versus tight ends this season? Got to be starting Cade Otton this week. I'd start him over Taysom Hill, who I like a lot this week. See, I think the Bucs probably cover the 9-point spread, but the Chiefs probably stay undefeated on Monday night. All right, that's every game. We got through every single game. We're about an hour in. We got multiple hours to go. Tons of start sits to get to. We're going to get to the start segment here momentarily. Going to talk through the free player props. I got 4 free player props for us today. We did go 2 for 2 on Thursday night with the Adams receptions and Adams to score a TD. I'll get to the DK lineup as well, Nick, coming here momentarily. Let's just hop to the DK lineup quick here. I'm going with the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith stack this week versus the Jags, and I'm running back with Parker Washington. A little bit of a hedge versus the Brian Thomas Jr. injury this week. No Gabe Davis, no Christian Kirk. I want a stack this week on a consolidated offense. The consolidated target shares, there's no Dallas Goedert again this week. Over 50% of the target share could easily go to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. We've seen that multiple times this season. We've seen that multiple times in the past before the season as well. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have a big game. That means Jalen Hurts had a big game. Run it back with Parker Washington. Expensive receivers to pay up for here. I'm sneaking in Tyrone Tracy and Nick Chubb. I don't expect Nick Chubb to be very highly owned. Had to go with a lower lower price running back. I think Nick Chubb could get 15 plus touches. Interesting low owned running back on an offense that is sort of ascending, but tough matchup for Nick Chubb this week. Obviously going with Taysom Hill. Happy, National Taysom Hill Day. And then Ladd McConkey in the flex as a mini stack with Nick Chubb. Going with the Pats defense versus the Titans. That's the DraftKings lineup for me today. Chuba or Jacobs? Yeah, I think I'd go Hubbard over Jacobs. Mixon's not on here because this is all the guys that have yet to play. The rankings on the YouTube Live, on the TikTok Live, these are rankings for the guys left this week. Frank Michael Smith, man, what's going on? Good to see you in the live. Pick one, Bigsby or Bucky. Yeah, I don't want either of those guys. Those guys are both. Pollard is playing. Yeah, it looks like Pollard's playing. Bigsby and Bucky both on my must bench list. They're both on the must bench list. I think I'd probably play Bigsby over Bucky Irving. You can't play these running backs versus the Chiefs. You just can't. Hey Sam, start Hawkinson or Kraft. Oh, I forgot to even mention Hawkinson when talking about the Vikings. That was a miss by me. Let's hop to the Vikings really quick again. Hawkinson is back, and it sounds like Hawkinson is going to be in his full role right away. Cleared to return. They're saying that they're not going to ease him in. There were some comments this week from the coaching staff of the Vikings that Hawkinson doesn't need to be eased in. He's fully ready to go. He's been ready to go and fully healthy for a little while. And let me just bring you back, guys, to what Hawkinson was last season, because I don't think people quite remember what Hawkinson was last season. He ranked second in fantasy points per game among tight ends. He ranked third in receptions and second in receiving yards per game. This was TJ Hawkinson. I kind of want to start Hawkinson this week. I expect Hawkinson to play very well in his first game back. It's not a bad matchup for Hawk versus the Colts. I'm usually someone who's a little scared to play guys in their first game back because you don't know exactly what the world's going to be like. Dalton Schultz had 4 for 52 last week versus the Colts. The Colts are allowing third most points per game to tight ends. No defense is allowing more catches per game to tight ends than the Indianapolis Colts. And again, last season, TJ Hawkinson had the third most catches per game. He had 6.3 catches per game. So yeah, I feel pretty good about Hawk, and I would play him over Kraft, especially with the Packers and Lions weather report in that game. Weatherman Sam's got you guys covered all season, and Weatherman Sam's here to tell you the Packers Lions game had some bad weather. 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, heavy rain throughout the Packers game. That's part of the reason Jordan Love is a must bench, on top of the fact that he's playing through an injury. We're playing Taysom Hill because Kendre Miller's out and Jamal Williams is out. And Taysom Hill gets the Panthers. He's basically the running back 2 behind Alvin Kamara, who never plays every snap, against the Carolina Panthers. The Saints get a big lead in this game. Taysom Hill's going to be part of that. And if they get a big lead, Taysom Hill's going to be getting a lot of carries. There's a really good chance for Taysom to score a rushing touchdown in this game and get 50-plus rushing yards in this game. We're benching Bucky and Rachaad White because they're playing the Chiefs. We're benching Tank Bigsby because he gets the Eagles, ETN's back, and he's not catching many passes. He needs to score a touchdown for fantasy. So yeah, I like Hawkinson. All right, I got us with the free player props. Aiden, I got you. We've been cashing the free player props this season. We really are on a very strong run with the free player props this season. We're 23-13. Let me just calculate this really quick. 23 out of 36. We're hitting 64% of the free player props this season. I got 4 free player props for us today, and then we'll get back to the start sits. Pretty much the rest of the live after this, we're going to grind through start sit questions. We're going to get to all of the toughest start sit questions over the next couple hours once we talk through the free player props. And again, I got 4 free player props today that I like a lot. I know I've teased a bunch of them already. So starting out, number 1, Taysom Hill over half a touchdown. We're getting plus odds on this. The Carolina Panthers, guys, have been awful versus the run this season. The Carolina Panthers are allowing the most rushing touchdowns per game in the NFL. There is no Kendre Miller. There is no Jamal Williams this week. And Alvin Kamara does not play every snap. This has never been what Alvin Kamara does. Alvin Kamara is the running back 1 this week, partially for this exact reason. Kamara, though, he has more targets than carries in his last 2 games. He's been under 50% snap share in his last couple of games. He's been battling through injuries all season. They can't give Alvin Kamara this massive workhorse role with these other running backs out. He's going to have a great role still in a good matchup, but in comes Taysom Hill as the running back 2. You get to play in the tight end slot. He's got a great chance at a touchdown this week versus the Panthers. By the way, the Panthers, not only are they allowing the most rushing touchdowns per game to running backs, who that I really consider Taysom Hill running back this week, They're also allowing the most receiving touchdowns to tight ends this season. Taysom Hill could easily get some run at tight end this week too. They allowed 2 tight end touchdowns last week, 2 tight end touchdowns the week before that. They allowed 2 tight end touchdowns to the Saints back in week 1 to both Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau. We've seen 3 different games where the Panthers allowed 2 tight end touchdowns. And they also lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns allowed. So yeah, Taysom Hill to score a touchdown. That's free player prop number 1. I like Taysom Hill as a top 10 tight end option in fantasy too. Sticking to this game, Chris Olave. This reception line is just too low. They're giving plus odds in some places on this Chris Olave receptions line. Guys, Chris Olave had 8 catches last week. Derek Carr wasn't even active. He had 8 catches. He had a 37% target share, 14 targets. Chris Olave's floor is 4 or 5 catches in this game, and his ceiling is well above that. I like the Chris Olave receptions line. Even if this game isn't close, I think Chris Olave can hit this in the first half. Over 5.5 receptions, he could easily get 2-3 receptions on the first drive of this game versus the Panthers. Not a scary defense, the Carolina Panthers. That's why we got 2 free player props against them. They're allowing the 4th most receptions per game to receivers. If you aren't getting the through line here, the Panthers defense is awful. I mean, terrible. I think they're the worst defense in the NFL. They rank dead last in tight end touchdowns. They rank dead last in running back touchdowns. They rank 4th worst in receptions to receivers. They rank bottom 10 in basically every single metric you could possibly look at. And last week, Sutton had 8 catches. The week before that, McLaurin had 6 catches. We've seen at least one receiver beat this line in basically every single game the Panthers have played. It's going to be Chris Olave this week over 5.5 receptions. So we're at Taysom Hill over half a touchdown, Olave over 5.5 receptions. On to the next 2 in the night game tonight. Hawkinson over 3.5 receptions. Guys, Hawkinson, we just talked about it. He had the 3rd most receptions per game in the NFL last season among tight ends, 6.3 catches per game. And now he gets the Colts, who are allowing the most receptions per game to tight ends, and they're setting this line at 3.5. Another one that he could easily hit in the first half of this game, assuming he plays his full role. There's a little bit of risk here with Hawkinson's first game back, but reading through what the coaches have talked about this week, does not sound like they're going to hold Hawkinson back in this game. And then Jonathan Taylor, over 2.5 receptions. Like this one a lot too, with Joe Flacco starting. JT has had almost no target share in the games with Anthony Richardson. But the games with Joe Flacco, we had a game in week 4, he had 3 catches. The target share has been there a little bit more in the Joe Flacco games. They get a matchup versus the Vikings. The Vikings have allowed the 4th most catches per game to running backs this season. We saw Devin Singletary, Kyle Juszczyk, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Kyron Williams, all went over this line versus the Vikings. The Colts are 5-point underdogs in this game. They're likely going to be playing from behind at some point. So I like this line for Jonathan Taylor receptions as well. So the 4 free player props today, we got Taysom Hill over half a touchdown, Chris Olave over 5.5 receptions, Hawkinson over 3.5 receptions, and JT, Jonathan Taylor, over 2.5 receptions. Those are the free player props today. Hopefully we go 4-0 and get to 27-13 on the free player props this season. All right. We are officially in the start-sit mode of the live stream. Really for the next hour and a half, 2 hours. We're going to be grinding through all the start-sit comments, both on the TikTok live, both on the YouTube live. We're live on TikTok and YouTube right now. All the same info on both lives. But the YouTube live, I can share a screen. It is a better viewing experience on YouTube because I can share a screen. If you're watching live on TikTok, you can come to YouTube live really easily right in the TikTok live. All right. I think we should do what we did last week. And I felt like we were more efficient with the start-sit comments last week by doing it this way. It was almost just easier for me to go quickly when we focus position by position first. So we're going to do what we did last week to start out with the start-sits. Again, we're going to get to hundreds here. For the next 5-10 minutes, we're really going to focus in on the QB start-sit decisions. Just the QB ones. So if you got QB start-sits, send those in the live. We're going to pull up the QB ranks here. We got the QB ranks up on the YouTube live. We're going to, for the next 5-10, really narrow in on the QB start-sits. Then we're going to jump to the tight end start-sits. These are the 1Z positions in most leagues. And then we'll really focus on the wide receiver running back start-sits for pretty much the rest of the live stream. All right, so let's start with the QB start-sits. Mahomes or Kyler? Yeah, I'd go Mahomes over Kyler. Mahomes versus the Bucs. I think this is the first Mahomes game over 20 points this season. Mahomes or Dak? Yeah, I got them back. They're projected actually the exact same amount of points in the Walter Pick set, 18.3 points. Both really good options. I think I'd lean Mahomes, though, over Dak. The floor for Mahomes just feels a little bit better than it does for Dak. Just a little bit better. Weatherman Sam, going to take a break here. We'll get to Weatherman Sam again probably later in the live about the Packers-Lions game. The floor feels a little bit better for Mahomes than Dak. when you look at the matchup versus the Bucs, guys, Spencer Rattler had 15 points versus the Bucs. I mean, in what world is Mahomes going to have less fantasy points than whatever Spencer Rattler did? That's a little oversimplifying, but is it really? Spencer Rattler went for 14.4. And Dak has a lower floor, I think, with the touchdown. I mean, with the turnovers we've seen from Dak, a couple really bad turnovers last week. I still think there's a good ceiling in pass volume for Dak. I know he's not been good this season. But the thing that I think is getting lost with a lot of the Dak Prescott analysis, Dak's had one of the more difficult schedules so far this season. He's had one very good matchup this season against the Ravens. He had 30 points in that game. All of his other matchups have really been suboptimal matchups for quarterbacks. And the rest of the season, he has one of the easiest schedules the rest of the season, starting this week versus the Falcons. And we know the pass volume has an extremely high ceiling. He's thrown at one of the games against the Ravens, he threw 51 pass attempts. There's very few quarterbacks that can get up to that. So yeah, it's still a good ceiling, I think, for Dak in this game. I still like Dak. But yeah, I would go Dak over Knicks. I'd go Mahomes over Dak. I'd go Knicks over Stafford. I'd go Cousins. Cousins versus Darnold. I got Darnold over Kirk. They're close, though. That's a really close one. Hawk is back. I think I probably would go Darnold over Kirk. Kirk is a guy that you can start with some confidence this week, though, for sure. Caleb or Stafford. Yeah, I think I'd lean Caleb over Stafford. Ryan, I had the DFS lineup. Been loving the app all season. Yeah, guys, if you haven't checked out the Walter Picks app yet, I do not know what you're waiting for. It is a free app. I've spent the last 4 years of my life helping build this app. Use code SAM when you sign up. You'll get a completely free 7-day trial to the premium features, but there's tons of free features as well. I would bench the Jags running backs if I can this week. Deciding between Kyler and Baker. Yeah, it's Kyler. Yeah, if you're a Bears fan, I get it. I get not wanting to go with Kyler. The Bears defense has been good. Kyler's been a little inconsistent. He's actually been on a pretty good stretch recently, though. I think you kind of have to go Kyler over Baker. And almost every single week, I've told people to bench Baker in different spots. And almost every single week, I've been wrong. I mean, he's been over 23 points in 5 straight games. You got to give some respect to what we've seen from Baker Mayfield this season. I get the urge to want to start him. He's second in pass yards per game. He's thrown the most touchdowns in the NFL. He's had at least 3 passing touchdowns in 4 straight games. But a lot of these games were Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and they are both out again this week. And now he gets the Chiefs, and this is not a good matchup for the Bucs offense. Purdy had 20 points. Purdy and Lamar, the only 2 QBs over 20 points. Kirk didn't do it. Burrow didn't do it. And back to the Kirk Cousins start sits, too. Yeah, I would play Bo over Stafford for sure. Kirk Cousins, I get the want to start him, too. And this is a good spot for Kirk. It's kind of comparable to the matchup he had last week. It's just a little weird. All of the points for Kirk Cousins this season have come against the Buccaneers. Literally basically all of them. He hasn't had a single game over 18 points except for the 2 versus the Bucs where he's combined for almost 70 fantasy points. He's got 65 points versus the Buccaneers this season. He has 780 passing yards. You heard that right. 780 passing yards. More than that, actually. Was it 785 passing yards and 8 touchdowns? Kirk Cousins has for just the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season. That's why you have to start Mahomes this week, guys. You got to start Mahomes. Dak or Cousins? Yeah, I'm going Dak over Cousins. I just feel like there's just a little bit of risk with Cousins because of what I was just saying. But this is a good matchup for Cousins too. I don't think you need to bench Cousins. I would play Baker over Love. I think you got to bench Jordan Love this week. Kirk or Caleb? That one's close. I think I got Caleb 2 spots behind Kirk. Yeah, I think I'd go Kirk over Caleb. Goff or Mahomes, I'm going Mahomes there. Sam Laporta or Kyle Pitts this week with the weather being bad. Yeah, I still think it's Laporta over Kyle Pitts. And I think Taysom Hill's, right in the mix there too. Michael, I'm not playing Madison over Amari if Amari plays. I refuse to start the guy, Michael, who had 1.1 yards per carry last week. I know they played the Chiefs. Toughest matchup for running backs, but 1.1 yards per carry. I mean, he basically could have had just as many yards if he just laid down the second he got the ball every play. I know I'm oversimplifying it a little bit there, but I don't feel good about the Raiders running backs just in general if Amari plays. But I don't think we've gotten confirmation yet on Amari yet. He's one of the few guys still out there that's uncertain about. Brian Robinson Jr. sounds like he's going to play. Yeah, we haven't gotten any update yet on Amari. Love or Flacco? Yeah, I'm going Flacco over Love. I want to bench Love. I'm playing Jaden Daniels, seeing him in some of these start sits. I'm playing Daniels over Mahomes. I'm playing Daniels over Dak. I'm playing Daniels over Burrow over Knicks. You kind of have to go Daniels, guys. We already got to this one. Knicks or Kyler. Yeah, so they're back-to-back in my ranks. I think I lean Knicks, given the matchup. I think I would go Bo Nix, but it's a close call, man. OG here. What's going on? Random name. How we doing? Do I start Addison, Bucky, or Raymond at flex? Love your content. Keep all the great work. Thanks, man. I appreciate the positivity, guys, from everybody in this live stream. Seriously, shout out to everyone in this live. I look forward to these Sunday lives all week long. So many good games to talk about. So many start sits to think through and talk through. A lot of really difficult start sits. It sometimes gets harder as the season goes on. With the start sits, you get new information. You got a lot of injuries to think through, a lot of different matchups and dynamics to think through. Where it's like week one, it's pretty straightforward. Just start the guys drafted. It gets sometimes hard as the season goes on, but we got to get these right. We got to get into the fantasy playoffs to then win the fantasy football championship. That's what it's all about, man. Yeah, this one's a tough one. You can't start Raymond. Khalif Raymond, not startable this week. Just straight up not startable. Like, he cannot be started. I know he had a big game last week, but that game has 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, heavy rain. That is not going to play well for Khalif Raymond, who's really just a punt returner, who's being forced on the field because Jameson Williams is suspended. So it's really between Bucky and Addison. And I don't want to start Bucky this week. Addison maybe the answer. Addison's almost definitely going to project worse, I think, than Bucky. Let's take a look here. Yeah, Bucky projects a little bit better. I think it is Bucky over Addison. Addison's been out-targeted by Jalen Naylor in back-to-back games, so you can't feel great about that. All right, let's jump to the tight end section of the live now. I'm playing Knicks over Love, and I'm playing Knicks over Caleb Williams too. Mahomes or Hurts, so you can't bench Hurts. Hurts had 40 points last week, guys. All right, let's go to the tight ends. And then we'll really narrow in on the flex decision, the running backs, receivers, and flex decisions. Start Taysom over Njoku. No, it is National Taysom Day. Happy National Taysom Hill Day to all those who celebrate. We're taking Taysom Hill over half a touchdown. We're playing Taysom Hill in a bunch of spots, but not over Njoku. You can't start Taysom Hill over Bowers, over Kelsey, over Otten, over McBride, over Njoku, or Evan Ingram. And then him versus Laporta, I think, is extremely close with the weather report for Laporta. I still think I'd lean towards Laporta, who had over a 30% target share last week. Then it's Taysom. I played Taysom over Pitts. I think I would go Laporta over Pitts too. And honestly, mixed signals from Kyle Pitts last week. Because on one side of it, this was the best fantasy game. I think of Kyle Pitts' career was the best fantasy game. He scored multiple touchdowns. I don't think we've ever seen that from Pitts before. He had 2 big catches, 4 catches, 91 yards, 2 TDs, 25 points. But he played less than half the snaps. He only had an 18% target share. He played less than half the snaps, and he ran around in less than half the passing plays. I mean, this was both season lows for Kyle Pitts. So he was out there the fewest he's been out there, the least he's been out there. But when he was out there, he was making big plays. So yeah, I think Laporta and Taysom over Pitts makes sense this week. I think Hawkinson versus Pitts, super close one. I like the Hawkinson over 3.5 receptions line. That's one of the free player props of the day. I think the floor is arguably a little bit higher for Hawk than Pitts. That Falcons and Cowboys game, though, does have the highest over-under of the week. It feels like a game you want pieces of. So I think I would go Pitts over Hawkinson. I would play Pitts over Ferg, over Andrews. Kelsey or Bowers. Yeah, I'm going Bowers over Kelsey. But it's close, man. They're both in the same tier. I'm not going to die on a hill of Bowers over Kelsey this week specifically. I do think I would go Bowers over Kelsey rest of season. I'm playing Dak over Love. We talked about the QBs. And Njoku or Mooney. Yeah, I think I lean towards Mooney over Njoku. Otten or Bowers. It's Bowers. It's Bowers over Otten. Guys, Brock Bowers, he only has 1 touchdown this season. He still ranks number 2 in fantasy points per game. He has the most catches among tight ends. He's second in yards. Kittle's the only guy that's really rivaling Brock Bowers this season. And Kittle scored a ton of touchdowns. He ranks number 1 in fantasy points per game. But Bowers has been incredibly consistent. Hasn't been under 10 points in over a month. There's no Devontae Adams now. This is not a bad matchup for Bowers. You kind of have to start Bowers. Yeah, I would go Mooney over Njoku, seeing that one in both lives. We're focused in on tight ends right now. Next few minutes, I'm looking for the tight end start sit questions, and then we're going to move on to the running backs and receivers next. Yeah, I'm going Kelsey over McBride. It goes Bowers, then Kelsey. Those are the tier 1 guys. I really think both these guys you can't go wrong with. And then tier 2, Cade Otton, Trey McBride, David Njoku, and Evan Ingram. Kraft or Andrews. Yeah, I think I would go Andrews over Kraft. I do not feel great about Kraft. I'm going Kelsey over Otten. I don't have Kittle here because these are tight end ranks for all the tight ends that have yet to play this week. Ferguson or Otten. Yeah, I'm going Otten over Ferg. I'm playing Hawk over Kraft. I'm playing Ferg over Kincaid. I think Kincaid's a bench. Taysom or Pitts? Yeah, I'm going Taysom. I'm going Taysom over Pitts. Thoughts on starting Pitts and Bauer, Sam? Yeah, so there's a list of tight ends. Really, everyone through TJ Hawkinson, I think you can consider in certain spots as a flex option. Brock Bowers, definitely a flex option. Kelsey, Otten, McBride, Njoku, Ingram, Laporta, Taysom, Pitts, and Hawkinson, all flex options in certain situations. I don't think it's a bad move this week in some start sits to go with the tight ends. Kmet or Andrews. Yeah, I'm going Andrews over Kmet. Gesicki at 19. Yeah, maybe it's a little low for Gesicki. I do think the floor is low for Gesicki. He's coming off a big game, I believe. Yeah, 12.3 points. I mean, big game. He had 7 catches, 73 yards. I think he fumbled. He must have fumbled in this one too. Yeah, he had 1 fumble. He had a 22% target share, though, without T. Higgins in the lineup. Now he gets the Raiders. But all 4 games before that, Gesicki was under 5.5 points. Pitts or Laporta? Yeah, I'm going Laporta over Pitts. I'm playing McBride over Njoku, but it's close. I'm going Otten over Pitts. Ottens or Dobbins for the flex spot. I already have Kelsey. Yeah, this one might be Otten. Otten projects really well. Dobbins is in for another big workload and a tough matchup. Yeah, this one's Otten. Go Otten over Dobbins. They actually project for the same amount of points. I'm playing McBride over Otten in most weeks. This week, Otten is a better option, I think, than McBride given the matchups. Is Hawk worth a pickup? I have Njoku. If so, do I drop Pittman or Waddle? Oh, Jason, I don't know if you can really drop either of these guys and feel good about it. If you already have Njoku too, you're going to start Njoku over Hawk this week. I mean, it's close, man. It's close. All right, let's get to the last of the tight end starts. It's here, Njoku or McBride. Yeah, I'm going McBride over Njoku, just barely. Taysom Hill or Wandale? I'm going Taysom. Taysom over Wandale. Taysom has a much better chance at touchdown than Wandale does. All right, we're on to the wide receiver and running back portion of the live now. Yeah, I'd go Darnold over Baker Mayfield this week. We just spent some concentrated time on the running backs, on the quarterbacks, on the tight ends. Let's get to the really tough ones here of the running backs and the receivers. I'm playing Taysom over Kraft. Yep, for sure. All right, Sam, you've been my secret weapon for 3 years. Start 2 full PPR. Jaden Reed, Brian Thomas Jr., Keenan Allen, Mark Andrews. Just do not start Mark Andrews here. Get Mark Andrews out of here. These are 3 other high upside, decent floor options. And Brian Thomas Jr., I think I'm coming around to him being a must start. I think I disagree with where I had him ranked earlier when I thought he might not play. The injury is a chest injury for Brian Thomas Jr. Seems like something that if he's able to play, he should be able to play fully. Let me pull Brian Thomas Jr. here. Let's for a second, venture into the world where Brian Thomas Jr. is not dealing with an injury. Yeah, he is, but let's say he's not. Christian Kirk's out. Gabe Davis is out. They're 7.5-point underdogs versus the Eagles. I mean, this is just a smash spot for a healthy Brian Thomas Jr. I think you kind of have to take the risk that if he's going to play, he's going to be close to that healthy role. In which case, he's really a must start here. Like, you got to start him over Jaden Reed, I think, with the weather for the Packers. 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts and heavy rain. Keenan Allen's in a good spot. Let's do a comparison with all 3 of these guys. Brian Thomas Jr., Keenan Allen. And let's switch to the wide receiver ranks here. I'll go back to the receiver ranks on the TikTok live. Go to the receiver ranks on the YouTube live as well. Bunch of stuff I think I want to adjust in these receiver ranks. First of all, Terry McLaurin, accidentally left him out. He's right up there in the top 20 receivers in borderline must-start territory. All right, we got Jaden Reed as another option here. I want to lean towards benching Jaden Reed. Reed actually projects the best here. It's a good matchup for him versus the Lions. Bad weather situation for him. I think the answer here is Brian Thomas Jr. and Jaden Reed. I think it's Jaden Reed over Keenan. And it's Brian Thomas Jr. over Keenan too. You're playing the 2 high stealing options. Keenan's arguably the safer floor guy. I think it's BTJ and Jaden Reed here. Tough call for sure in PPR. I play all these guys, though, definitely over Mark Andrews. We got Brian Thomas Jr. versus Michael Pittman. Another really tough one. Pittman gets a great spot versus the Vikings tonight. We got Joe Flacco starting. That's good for Michael Pittman. I think this one's Michael Pittman. I think I'd go Michael Pittman here versus Brian Thomas Jr. Josh Downs or Olave. Yeah, so you got to start both these guys. They're both top 10 options. You're starting Josh Downs. You're starting Olave. And honestly, I got Downs one spot ahead of Olave in the ranks. I'm not benching Olave. I got Olave over 5.5 receptions, one of the free player props today. I think the floor and ceiling is just really high for Olave without Rashid Shaheed in the lineup anymore. With Derek Carr starting, you just can't bench Olave. He had a 37% target share last week. I like Downs a lot, though. I'm playing Downs over Jacobs. Hubbard versus Tracy. That one's definitely close. First place in 6-2. Let's go, man. Definitely the time, Patrick, to start locking in on the fantasy playoffs. And yeah, I honestly think this one's probably Taysom. I think Taysom over Dobbs is fine with the weather report for the Packers. Taysom versus Dunze is probably close. I could see a good argument really for any of these three guys in this start-sit decision. I lean towards Taysom. Yeah, Walter agrees with me here. You're getting the running back 2 for the Saints versus the dead last run defense. The Saints get a matchup. Taysom Hill gets a matchup versus the Panthers. The Panthers rank dead last in touchdowns allowed to running backs. I would really consider Taysom more of a running back this week. And then they also rank dead last in touchdowns allowed to tight ends. And Taysom's probably going to get to run at tight end too. I think he's got a really good chance at a touchdown. Better chance, I think, than Odunze. I really do think Odunze is one of the more underrated receivers just in general still. But yeah, I'm fine going Taysom over Odunze. Dak or Stafford, I'm going Dak. Sam, this is my toughest start sit yet. Oh, God, here we go. Bowers, and Marv, McConkey, Monty. Pick a wide receiver, tight end, and flex. Assuming Higgins isn't playing yet. T. Higgins is not playing. Don't need to assume he's not playing. You're starting Bowers at tight end to start out. You got to pick one of these receivers. I think it's McConkey over Marv this week. He has the better matchup this week. McConkey versus Marvin Harrison Jr. Definitely a tough call. Would you start Olave or Chase Brown? I think I'd go Olave or Chase Brown. I like both guys this week for sure. Yeah, it's McConkey over Marv. McConkey's been better of late. McConkey's the better matchup too. So it's McConkey over Marv. All right, so that leaves you with a flex between Monty, Marv, and Otten. Let's do this comparison because I think my gut says Marv here over Otten, but I have a feeling Otten might project better. And then Monty's not a bad option this week, especially with the weather report in that game. Man, Otten projects the best here. It's always a little scary to go flex with the tight ends. David Montgomery leads the group in points per game, total yards per game, touchdowns per game. I'd say Monty is the safest option here of the group. Looking at this, I think it's probably David Montgomery, honestly, unless you really want to risk it and go Cade Otton. But yeah, I think both guys probably started over Marv. Hey Walter, should I drop Andrews? What's going on? 802 Vibes in the YouTube Live. Shout out to everyone in the YouTube Live right now, by the way. Smash the like button. My name is not Walter. Classic mistake. Do not worry about it. My name is Sam. Walter is the AI model that powers the Walter Picks app. I'm showing the app on screen right now. If you're watching live on YouTube, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, come to the YouTube Live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. Walter is the AI model that gives the Walter Picks app the best possible projections you could possibly find custom to your league settings. It's a free app. In the YouTube description, in the TikTok bio. Classic mistake again. Do not worry about it. And there's two sides to every decision, basically, in fantasy. Who are you dropping Andrews for? Because Andrews is definitely a guy to watch this week. He's been heating up a little bit in fantasy. You know, as part of National Tight End Day last week with a touchdown. He's got now 3 straight games with a touchdown for Mark Andrews. Not a terrible schedule over the next month. But the thing that I'm most intrigued about with Andrews heading into this week is this usage going to stick? He had the best snap share he's had since week 1 last week. He had the best route participation he's had since week 2 last week. The target share wasn't great, only 14% target share. He still has not gone over 20% target share once this entire season. So I'm still a little skeptical of Mark Andrews. But if the snap share stays where it was last week, I think he's not droppable. McLaurin should have been on this list. Accidentally left him out. I would start Puka over him. I'd go McLaurin right in that Zay Flowers, JSN, DJ Moore tier. I might play McLaurin even over Jacoby Myers. Hey, Sam. Need 3. Nix or Flacco? Yeah, we're going Nix over Flacco. Brian Thomas Jr. or Devontae. We're going Devontae Smith over Brian Thomas Jr. We're playing Downs over Mooney. Seen that one. I'm playing Downs over basically everybody, guys. You got to play Downs against the Vikings. Yeah, I'm going Devontae over Brian Thomas Jr. I'm going Devontae over Nick Chubb. Tank Bigsby cannot be started. Travis Etienne cannot be started. 5-star app, by the way. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's Devontae and Brian Thomas Jr. and Nick Chubb. I think it's the first 3 guys. I'm benching Travis Etienne. I'm benching Tank Bigsby this week. Tough matchup for them versus the Eagles. They're going to be in a split backfield. Tank Bigsby does not catch passes. It's a tough spot for him. All right, we got this. These are the questions that I was really excited for this week. We got the Julius Chestnut questions in the YouTube live coming in. And no, you can't start Julius Chestnut. Tony Pollard is expected to play. He is. So Chestnut can't be started. And Pollard could be in for like a workhorse role. So you definitely can't start Chestnut. I'm going Mostert over him. Mostert scored points last week. So yeah, tough spot here. Need 2 running backs off the waivers. Yeah, the waiver wire is looking bleak for the running backs. Yeah, Mostert, Algier, definitely decent options off the waiver wire this week at running back. There's really not that many great running backs options off the waivers. Algier gets a good spot versus the Cowboys if he gets enough work behind Bijan. Both in a good spot versus the Cowboys. They rank 3rd worst, I think, versus running backs and points allowed. Mostert scored twice last week. They said they want Jalen Wright more involved. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Jacobs or Stevenson? Yeah, I think I lean Jacobs over Stevenson, even though his matchup's tougher. There is a Weatherman Sam report really quick, since I know there's some new people in here since we talked about it. Weatherman Sam's got you all season. He's got you all season. And there is some weather to be aware of. Let me just get to the start sit real quick. I got pulled up on the YouTube live. And then we'll talk about the Weatherman Sam report for the one game that had some concerning weather and what that means for fantasy. So 1 flex, 1 wide receiver in PPR. Don't start Deontay. Don't start Amari. Amari still might not play. We are still waiting for confirmation that Amari Cooper is even playing through his wrist injury. And it's a tough matchup versus the Dolphins. I think you go the first 2 here. Play Ladd, play BTJ. I'm warming up to Brian Thomas Jr. really as a must start. With Kirk out, with Gabe Davis out. I really had him ranked lower originally because I was nervous about his injury, but it sounds like it's one he could play through. And he gets the Eagles as a huge underdog. So I like Brian Thomas Jr. and Ladd, the 2 rookies here. All right, let's get to the Weatherman Sam report real quick because there's some concerning weather in this Packers-Lions game. It's going to be heavy rain throughout the game. There's also sustained winds around 15 miles an hour in this Packers-Lions game. And there's going to be wind gusts as high as 30 miles an hour. This is very similar to the weather report from the Bills-Seahawks game last week. If you guys remember last week's Weatherman Sam report, the Bills-Seahawks game ended up being kind of high scoring. There was still 41 points in that game. Josh Allen had a good game, 283 passing yards, 2 TDs still. James Cook, though, popped off. JSN got the slight edge over Tyler Lockett. Khalil Shakir led the Bills in receiving. This game environment, this weather report, pushes both of these teams more towards the run and more towards the short passing game. It is hard to throw the ball deep in heavy rain and 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So that's part of the reason I think you can't start Jordan Love dealing with the injury. It's part of the reason why I like David Montgomery a little bit more in certain spots. I think Josh Jacobs, too, probably gets a little bit more work because of this. Oh, yeah, I got you with the DFS lineup, Brian. I'm going with the Eagle stack this week with the sneaky bring back with Parker Washington with all the Jags injuries. Hawk versus Andrews. Yeah, I'm going Hawk. I'm going Hawk over Andrews. Puka's a start. Yeah, Puka's a start. Let me go back to the receiver ranks here. Reed or Dobbins. Oh, man, that one's close. I think Jade Reed does take a bit of a hit with his weather report. Dobbins has a tough matchup, but the volume should be there. It's Dobbins. It's Dobbins over Reed. I play McConkey over Dobbins, though. I play McConkey over Reed as well. Good morning, Sam. Tracy in a good matchup or banged up Jacobs in a tough matchup? Also pick 3. Yeah, Jacobs is banged up himself. He was questionable heading into this game. I think it was an ankle for Jacobs. Pull this up real quick. I believe it was an ankle thing. Yep, ankle, questionable, expected to play for Josh Jacobs. And I think I probably would go Tracy over Jacobs. Let me switch to the running back ranks here. Yeah, it's Tracy. Tracy had an 80% rush share last week. Went for over 100 rushing yards, scored a long rushing touchdown. Not a bad matchup for him versus the Commanders. Cousins or a banged up Love? Yeah, it's Cousins. Don't play a banged up Love in a game with heavy rain and 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. It just doesn't make sense. There's other good quarterback options out there that you can play. I'm playing Josh Downs, yep, easily over Chase Brown. Goff or Nix, yeah, I'd lean Nix over Goff. I think Reed over Worthy's fine. I'm playing Downs over Otten easily. Tua versus Love, I'm going Tua over Love. I think Love is a must bench. Hey, Sam, happy football Sunday. Joey, happy football Sunday to you as well. Happy football Sunday to everybody in the live stream right now. It is the best day of the week. We got a lot of great games on our TV screens in just a couple of hours from the app and you. Thanks, man. Monty or Tracy, full PPR this week. Yeah, so we just talked about that Lions-Packers game. It does really bode well for David Montgomery. It's not the best matchup for Monty. It's not a terrible matchup for him either, though. But Tracy is really tough to bench this week. I mean, they project really close together here. I think it is Tracy. I think the ceiling for Tracy is just a bit higher, a little bit more chance of the receiving work, a little bit more chance to not split the backfield. Obviously, Gibbs is going to stay very involved. David Montgomery needs to score a touchdown ultimately, and Tracy likely doesn't. He scored a touchdown last week, Monty. Didn't even get to 15 points. I think there's a good floor for Monty. He ranks 11th in fantasy points per game this season. Look, he's had one game without a touchdown. Crazy stuff. He's been incredibly consistent. He's averaging a touchdown per game. And then you got Tracy, the young rookie, who had an 80% rush share last week, 20 carries, popped off for 145 rushing yards and a TD in a more difficult matchup than he has this week. I think it's Tracy, man. I think you go Tracy. Definitely a close call. And I think both are reasonable options this week. Calvin Ridley or JSN? Yeah, I think I'd go JSN. I think I'd go JSN over Ridley. McConkey, Shakir, St. Brown start 2 years. Starting St. Brown. McConkey versus Shakir is close. I think it's probably McConkey, though, over Shakir. So, yeah, I think my official answer here is Tracy over Montgomery. It's a super close one, though. I'm going Waddle over Leggett. Jalen Waddle has been one of the biggest headaches in fantasy this season. He's in that category of guys that you can't drop and you can't start most weeks. But this week, I think Waddle is at least worth considering to start. Tua's back. Definitely raises Waddle's floor. It's likely we haven't seen the best Waddle game yet this season. Tight end rankings. Yeah, I'll hop back over the tight end rankings. I'm going Cook over Tracy. I'm going Tracy, I think, over Swift. Yeah, that one's super close. I mean, Swift is really tough to bench. He's really tough to bench. He's been 4 straight games popping off. Like Swift versus Tracy. Let's actually pull this up. I might change my mind on this and go against my rankings a bit here. Tracy has a worse matchup than Swift. He projects slightly better. Swift's been better this season. It's definitely over the last month. I think it's Swift over Tracy. It's just, you can't really bench Swift. He's had at least 18 points in 4 straight games. He's got 4 straight games with a touchdown. The Bears fall behind. He'll get involved in the pass game. He's just come off a season high 73% of the snaps, 18 carries. No targets last week, still had 19 points. I think it's Swift over Tracy. It's a close call, though. Puka, Walker, flex. Yeah, it's Walker over Puka. Sam, Tracy, Pollard, or Devontae at flex, half PPR. Half PPR definitely changes this a little bit. Well, let me switch the settings to half PPR. Thanks for letting me know this is half PPR, by the way, guys. Knowing your scoring settings matters a ton. This is part of the reason the Walter Picks app is so powerful. That's why you got to download the app if you don't have it yet. Link is in the YouTube description, in the TikTok bio. It's the best app possible for fantasy advice and for props. All right, let's go Tracy, Pollard, and Devontae. Wow, Pollard versus Tracy is super close. Pollard projects the best. Yeah, half PPR. Devontae Smith projects much worse here than he would in a PPR league. In PPR, I think I'd probably go Devontae Smith. This is also assuming, health for Pollard here. He was a true question mark in this game. Does sound like he's going to play. It's a good matchup for Pollard. The best matchup you could pretty much have as a running back. Pollard's role has been massive with Spears out. He's playing 80% of the snaps. He's getting 20 carries, 4 targets. I mean, he's had at least 22 opportunities in back-to-back weeks. At least 20 touches, basically in 3 straight games. It's a close one here. I honestly think Tracy is just a bit safer, though, with the injury for Pollard. I probably would just go Tracy. I think I'd just go Tracy over Pollard. It's not like it's a bad matchup for Tracy either. And in a half PPR, you do kind of want to lean towards the running backs because of how the scoring works. I still think Devontae Smith has a really high ceiling. PPR, look, this is much closer. I honestly think I probably would go Devontae Smith here in PPR versus the Jags. But the running backs do have a higher floor. Hi, Sam. Happy Sunday. Hope you had a good holiday. Thanks, Kyle. You as well. Is D-Hop, Coleman, Irving, or Addison startable over guys like Hubbard, Swift, and Mooney? Would also love the prop. Thanks as always. Yeah, we got 4 props today, Kyle. I got you with those. We talked about them already once. We'll get to them again here in a sec. I think D-Hop is a guy that I like as a sleeper a lot this week. Coleman definitely is in the cards. I would not start Irving or Addison. I don't think they're startable. And I don't think any of these guys are startable over these other guys. Not over Hubbard, over Swift, or over Mooney. I think Leggett versus Judy is close. Let's get to this one. Walter/Sam. Sam's gut says Judy over Leggett. Let's see what Walter thinks, though. Yeah, Walter agrees with me. It's Judy. It's Judy over Leggett. Leggett's in the better matchup, though, I think, this week. All right, let's get to the free player props again real quick. I'll talk through each of these. We are balling with the free player props this season. 23-13 on the free player props so far this season. We went 2-0 on Thursday night with Devontae Adams scoring a touchdown, Devontae Adams getting 7 catches. Devontae Adams somehow coming out of the concussion protocol and saving us with that touchdown at the end of the game. Thought for sure that was dead after he got injured. All right, so we've got Taysom Hill over half a touchdown. This one feels like the layup of the week. I'm calling this week National Taysom Hill Day. We had National Tight End Day last week. So shout out to everyone who celebrates National Taysom Hill Day with me today. We got Taysom versus the Panthers. The Panthers ranked dead last in running back touchdowns allowed. They've allowed the most running back touchdowns this season. Taysom Hill's the running back 2 for the Saints today. There's no Kendre Miller. There's no Jamal Williams. They also allowed the most touchdowns to tight ends this season, the Carolina Panthers. So we got a Swiss Army knife opportunity here with Taysom. Bench Tyreek? No, do not bench Tyreek. Let me go back to the receiver ranks here. Seeing a lot of receiver questions. So I'm taking Taysom over half a touchdown in a great matchup versus the Panthers in an increased role with the injuries, the running backs. I also like Chris Olave's line of receptions against the Panthers. So not only have the Panthers been crushed in terms of touchdowns by the tight ends and by the running backs, they've also allowed the 4th most receptions per game to the receivers. And this is despite the Panthers getting killed in most games. Chris Olave had a 37% target share last week without Rashid Shaheed. Now Derek Carr comes back. I really like this line for Olave over 5.5 receptions. Thinks he's got a great chance to do this in the first half. It's possible this game's over in the 4th quarter. I also think that there's a decent chance this game ends up being closer than people expect, though. The Saints are 7-point favorites in Carolina today. I like the Panthers +7 in that. But yeah, I like Chris Olave over 5.5 receptions. Taysom Hill to score a touchdown. Both these are really good ones. The other two I like a lot too in tonight's game. Hawkinson over 3.5 receptions. TJ Hawkinson had the 2nd most receptions per game. Sorry, the 3rd most receptions per game among tight ends last season. 6.3 catches per game. Almost twice what this line is. And the Colts, they allowed the most tight end receptions per game so far this season. Great spot for Hawkinson in his first game back. And based on what the coaches have said this week, it sounds like Hawkinson is going to be in an every down role basically immediately in his first game back. He's fully healthy, ready to go. The Colts allowing 8 catches per game to tight ends. That ranks dead last in the NFL. Hawkinson was at 6.3 last season. So yeah, I like Hawkinson this week over 3.5 receptions. And I also like Jonathan Taylor's line over 2.5 receptions for JT with Joe Flacco starting. We saw him do this once already with Joe Flacco starting. And the Colts have allowed a lot of catches to the running backs. They rank 4th worst in receptions allowed to the running backs. Monty did it. Gibbs did it. Kyron Williams did it. Breece Hall did it. Josh Jacobs did it. All in the last 4 games for the Vikings. So JT over 2.5 receptions. Those are the 4 free player props today. Taysom Hill over half a touchdown. Olave over 5.5 receptions. Hawkinson over 3.5. JT over 2.5. Terry McLaurin, I accidentally left off this rankings list. That was just a miss by me. I slid him in, though, on the YouTube live where I can adjust the ranks after the live starts. I'm sliding him in right behind Cortland Sutton, right at wide receiver 20. I play him over Jaden Reed. I would play Terry McLaurin over Jaden Reed. I would play Terry McLaurin over Amari Cooper, over Ladd McConkey, over Keenan Allen, over Calvin Ridley. I think I would probably go Sutton over Terry. It's close. Pittman over Terry is close. JSN versus Terry is also close. Flowers versus Terry, close. Like he's in that same tier. He's in tier 3/4. I put him in tier 3, really, with those other guys. Downs over Terry. Yep, Downs, definitely. You got to start Downs. I played D-Hop, I think, over Worthy this week. It's close, though. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, make sure you hit the follow button. It will not show me your comment on my end on TikTok unless you hit the follow button. Travis, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. Keenan, Pittman, D-Hop, or Mooney. Pick 2. Yeah, this one's close. I think it's probably Pittman, Keenan, or Mooney. Yeah, I think it's Pittman and Keenan over Mooney and D-Hop. I think that's how I would do it. Hi, Sam. Walter picks OG. Tal, how's it going, man? Need help. Wide receiver 1. Downs or Nakua? Downs. Play Downs. Play Downs over Puka. We're playing Downs over Like the tier of receivers that I think is really tough to start Downs over. Olave, I don't think I'd go Downs over Olave if I had to make that call. Neighbors, I don't think I'd make that call either. It's just too tough to bench Neighbors. London, same thing. Puka is really the line for me. I would start Downs over Puka. I would start Downs over Cooper Kupp. I would start Downs over Devontae Smith. Everyone else below that. You got to start Downs versus the Vikings with Joe Flacco starting. I'm playing Kupp over Waddle. And then Montgomery versus Tyrone. We were just talking about this exact one. This is really close between Monty and Tracy. I think it is Tracy. I think it is Tracy over Monty. I'd argue maybe Monty is a slightly safer floor, but I think it's Tracy. D-Hop or Tillman? I think I lean towards D-Hop over Tillman. I would go D-Hop over Xavier Worthy, I think, too. Neighbors, Downs, Olave, Chase Brown. 3 out of the 4. Yeah, bench Chase Brown here. In a PPR league, just bench Chase Brown. Chase Brown's in a really good spot. But I'm not starting him over Neighbors. Like, you have to start Neighbors and Olave. That I was just talking about. Those are 2 tough guys to bench over Downs for me. And then Downs versus Chase Brown. It's Downs. Chase Brown's in a good spot, but it's Downs in a PPR league. McConkey versus Brian Thomas Jr. is really close. It's a floor ceiling decision there. I think McConkey makes more sense to start than Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. is a good ceiling play. I honestly think you can slide him in like right around that range. I'd play McConkey and BTJ over Reed and over Amari, who rank higher in these rankings I'm showing right now. Tillman, Dobbs, or Shakir. Yeah, it's Shakir over both those guys. Scary Terry was accidentally left off this list. I'd slide him in right above Jaden Reed at the end of tier 3. JSN or Pittman, they're back-to-back here in the ranks. JSN's a tough one this week because he projects well again. He had a 4 game last week, but the matchup's tough, and the matchup's great for Pittman. The matchup's tough for JSN. The Rams rank number 1 in points allowed. No defense has allowed less points per game, fantasy-wise, than the Rams. But they've also allowed several massive games. You guys remember that Juwan Jennings 40-point bomb back in like week 4? That was against the Rams. Like, JSN does have a real ceiling here still versus the Rams, despite them being good versus receivers this season. I think it's Pittman, though. I think I'd probably go Pittman over JSN. I think I would go Pittman here. With Flacco starting, playing the Vikings, better matchup for him, I think I'd lean that way. I'd play Mooney over Lockett, too. I don't feel great about Lockett this week. Bowers struggles when Minshew starts. Start Hawk instead. No, Bowers still has to be started. I do like Hawk. I'm playing Taysom over Judy. I like Taysom in the flex this week. I'm playing Ladd over JSN, I think. That one's pretty close, but I think I'd go Ladd, too. I think I'm going Ladd, Brian Thomas Jr., and Michael Pittman all over JSN. I think Sutton over JSN might make sense, too. I think got to move JSN a little bit down from these original ranks. I did forget Scary Terry. Yes, I'd slide him in at the end of tier 3. Tracy or Brian Robinson Jr.? Yeah, I think it's Tracy over B-Rob. B-Rob dealing with an injury. Kraft or Hawkinson? It's Hawkinson. Pollard, Kupp, Downs, James Conner. I think you bench Pollard here. Let's do Pollard versus Conner. Assuming this is a PPR league. You're playing Downs, you're playing Kupp. And then James Conner versus Tony Pollard. Yeah, it's Conner over Pollard. Conner's in the tougher matchup. Pollard's got the best possible matchup for running back so far this season. But he's dealing with an injury of his own. It's not like Conner's been bad. Waddle or Ertz? Flex. Yeah, you got to go Waddle. This is how down bad it is with Waddle right now. You're thinking about Zach Ertz. Would you play Puka? Yeah, I'm playing Puka. I know I said not to play him on Thursday night. Last week, that was a miss. He got another injury to the same knee this week, but it sounds like it's minor. He's going to be okay and play. I think you kind of have to start him with what we saw in this last game. What a great Sunday for football. It's a great Sunday, Cam. Love the Walter Picks app. Thanks, man. You guys, if you haven't checked out the Walter Picks app yet, you got to try the Walter Picks app. It's in the TikTok bio. It's in the YouTube description. It's a free app. And there's some premium subscriptions in the app that come with a free 7-day trial if you use code SAM. Do appreciate that. Bigsby or Bucky. Yes, so both these guys are on my must bench list this week. So I'm sorry to inform you, Cam, but I really don't want to start Bigsby, and I really don't want to start Bucky, and for similar reasons. So ETN's back. And that's not good for Tank Bigsby, who already wasn't catching passes. Bigsby actually caught 2 passes last week, which was more than he had all season before last week. He had 2 catches, 8 yards on 3 targets. All those were season highs. The catches, the yards, and the targets. Not the yards, actually. He had a 28-yard catch back in week 5. But he's not running routes still. He's still really not running routes. He ran 11 routes. This was his most routes of the season. With ETN back, hard to expect Bigsby to be very involved in the pass game. He needs to score touchdowns to really have a big game. And that's going to be tough to do versus the Eagles, splitting time with Travis Etienne. But then Bucky is like basically unstartable versus the Chiefs. No running back has done well versus the Chiefs. I mean, we have not seen it. The best game versus the Chiefs so far this season was Brian Robinson back in week 3. He had 13 points. No running back. There's been one running back this entire season over 50 rushing yards versus the Chiefs. I mean, this is an incredibly good run defense. Guys, look at these numbers for the Raiders last week. I mean, crazy stuff here. Madison led the team with 15 rushing yards. He had 1.1 yard per carry. I mean, you just can't start Bucky in this game. Rachaad White definitely is preferred just because he's more of a pass game guy. I would go Bigsby over Bucky. I don't feel good about either of them, though. We're benching Kincaid because what's the ceiling for Kincaid, guys? He does not have a ceiling. Taysom Hill has a much higher ceiling than him. Oh, no. We got some breaking news. I expected this week, by the way, to get something like this. Brian Robinson Jr., inactive. B-Rob is inactive today versus the Giants. Big injury news here. Commanders expected he was going to be able to play. He's inactive. That's a big bump for Austin Eckler. It's a big bump. Was it Chris Rodriguez, I think, is the next guy? They're not going to give Eckler like this massive role. Jeremy McNichols. He gets a bump too. So Eckler and McNichols, the 2 running backs, versus the Giants today. Let's hop over to the running back ranks. Brian Robinson Jr. is out this week. Just getting that news report. He's injured. Yep, dealing with, I think it was an ankle injury, hamstring injury for B-Rob. He's out. Still waiting on the official report about Amari Cooper too. But Brian Robinson Jr. is out this week. That's big news. Sam, help. Start at flex. McMillan, Mark Andrews, Flowers, likely, and Tracy Jr. Yeah, it's Tracy. Play Tracy over Flowers. I think Tracy over Flowers makes sense. Good matchup for him. Also, Tillman or Hill. Yeah, I think I'd go Taysom Hill over Tillman. Big time question against the Adams owner. Need 2 running backs, tight end in the flex. Yeah, we're going Otten over McBride this week. 2 running backs, Jacobs, Chase Brown. Yeah, it's the first 2 running backs here. Chase Brown actually and Pollard probably over Jacobs. And then the flex is probably Jacobs. Jacobs for Shakir is close in a PPR league. You're not starting Dowdle. You're not starting Singletary. You're not starting Javonte Williams. It really comes down to Chase Brown versus Shakir here. Let's do this comparison quick. I think it's Chase Brown. There's no Zach Moss this week. Yeah, it's Chase Brown. Not even that close. Is Nichols a start? McNichols a start over Bucky now? He probably is. Bucky's a really tough one versus the Chiefs. Chase Brown or Gibbs? It's Gibbs. We're playing Kelsey over Otten. We're playing Kincaid over Ertz. Eckler or Hopkins in the flex now. Yeah, I probably would go Eckler in half PPR. I'd probably go Eckler over Hopkins. And I like Hopkins as a sleeper this week, but that's what he is. Hopkins is a sleeper this week. It's not like he's this must start you got to force into your lineups. I'm going Chase Brown over Pollard. Yep. I'm playing Taysom Hill over Kraft. Guys, happy Taysom Hill week. For all those who celebrate, it's not Taysom Hill week. It's happy Taysom Hill day. National Taysom Hill day. Marv or Jacoby? Yes, Jacoby over Marv. Let me pull up the ranks here as we update for the Brian Robinson injury news. Chase, how we doing in the YouTube live? Guys, we are live on TikTok and YouTube right now. We are 2.5 hours in. We still got another hour to go. It's been a fun live stream, man. A lot of good games to talk through. A lot of really difficult and interesting start-sit decisions. to think through. Brian Robinson Jr. just got ruled out. That's a big deal. Sounds like teams are trying to trade for Anthony Richardson. That's interesting. Still need to get official confirmation about Amari Cooper. Oh, I mean, come on. We're just getting a report here, too. Things must have soured on Bengals wide receiver Jermaine Burton over the weekend. He's not warming up at today's game versus the Raiders. Jermaine Burton, after playing a season-high 41% of snaps, making a big play, some optimism building, now he's not going to be a healthy scratch. Man just cannot get any momentum building. Hate to see that. Amari Cooper, inactive for week 9. Officially, Amari Cooper is inactive. Well, thanks in the YouTube. I appreciate the breaking news here. I'm glad I've told a lot of people to bench Amari. This week, Amari Cooper is inactive. This is good news for Shakir. This is good news for Keon Coleman. Obviously, bad news for Amari Cooper. So we got Amari Cooper inactive. We got Brian Robinson Jr. inactive. Get these guys out of your starting lineups. Amari Cooper is out. I wasn't sure he was even going to be 100% if he played. This is probably the best case for Amari long term. And makes it much easier for fantasy too. Kraft or Andrews? I'd go Andrews. Sam, need your help. Important game for first place today. Let's go, Jonah. That means you're in a great spot. Full PPR. Pick 2, BTJ, D-Hop, Jacoby Myers, and Tyron Tracy. Yeah, go BTJ and Tracy. Play Brian Thomas Jr. and Tracy. If you wanted to play it safe, you'd go Jacoby Myers and Tracy. But you don't get in first place by playing it safe, man. Brian Thomas Jr. has a massive ceiling in this game. There's no Christian Kirk. There's no Gabe Davis. They're 7.5-point underdogs. Taysom Hill over Ferg. It's Taysom over Ferg this week. I'm playing Taysom over Pitts. I'm playing Taysom over Ferg, and I think I would go Taysom over Tillman too. I think Taysom has the best ceiling. Yeah, there's no Brian Robinson Jr. There is no Amari Cooper. Both ruled out this week. Those are the two big injuries that I think we're ultimately waiting for. B-Rob and Amari. There was some optimism about B-Rob this morning, but it sounds like he's not going. Is Keon Coleman startable now? Yeah, Coleman and Shakir, they're startable. It's still not the best spot for the receivers in this one. Let me pull up the receiver ranks. By the way, the receiver ranks, I accidentally, if you're watching live on TikTok, accidentally left Scary Terry out. He's in the top 20. He's in tier 3. And yeah, we had Amari Cooper ranked really low already in anticipation of the injury. But yeah, Keon Coleman probably jumps up to tier 4, the end of tier 3, and Shakir, same thing. They're both startable. There's two sides to every start set decision, though. So who are you starting him over? That's the question. Brian Robinson Jr. is not playing. Amari Cooper is not playing. Austin Eckler gets a big bump from that. Jeremy McNichols gets a big bump to now. BTJ is now top 20 as well. Yep. I'd play Brian Thomas Jr. over Jaden Reed. I'd play him over Keenan Allen, over Calvin Ridley. I think I'd probably go Shakir over Brian Thomas Jr. Guys, Shakir has been balling. And Keon Coleman and Shakir, like they both have kind of been balling in different ways. But Shakir is the guy I prefer to start here. He has a lot of targets. He has 16 catches for 174 yards, 172 yards in his last 2 games. 16 catches. 17 targets, 16 catches for Shakir in his last 2. Just a high floor PPR option. Keon Coleman's more the ceiling play. You know, he's back-to-back end zone targets last week. He's had 195 yards, 9 catches, 195 yards last couple games. Brian Thomas Jr. is a start. Yep. McLaurin should be on here in the end of tier 3. Accidentally left him out. I'm playing Brian Thomas Jr. over Waddle. I'd play Terry over Brian Thomas Jr. Taysom or Eckler? I think it's Eckler over Taysom. Deontay cannot be started. Do not start Deontay Johnson. No. Doesn't sound like he's really going to play at all. He's going to play like 10 to 15 snaps, I think I read. In a bad spot with no B-Rob, should I pick up someone or just start ETN or Bucky? Oh, God, it's rough, man. I think I would rather Eckler over ETN and Bucky. Ridley's startable for sure. Taysom versus Marvin Harrison Jr. is close. I think I'd probably lean Marv over Taysom there. Any Weatherman Sam concerns? Yes, there is Weatherman Sam concerns. I think I probably would go ETN over Bucky if I had to choose. I really don't think you can start Bucky against the Chiefs. We've not seen any good games versus the Chiefs. Weatherman Sam is here for you all season long. And there's one report today to be aware of when it comes to the weather. And it is this Packers-Lions game. Unfortunately, this game was setting up to be one of the better games. I still think this is a game to be excited for. and one of the better games this week. This is in the late window today at 4:25 Eastern. This game still has a 47.5 point over-under. There's still going to be a lot of points in this game. This is very similar to the weather report we had last week for the Bills-Seahawks game. There was still over 40 points scored in that game. Josh Allen still had a good game. The Bills scored 31 in that game. They still were able to throw. But just be aware of what to expect in this game. There's going to be heavy rain throughout the Packers-Lions game. And wind gusts as high as 30 miles an hour. So this is actually a little bit worse. If you remember what the report was last week for that Bills game, it was same thing, but wind gusts up to 25 miles an hour. This one's up to 30. So slightly worse winds in this game. Same sort of concerning rain throughout the game, heavy rain. These two things combined do not bode well for deep passing plays. So this is a knock for Jaden Reed. This is a big knock, I think, for Christian Watson. Makes me a lot less excited to try to start Dontavian Wicks. Makes me a little less excited for Tucker Kraft. I still think Jaden Reed has a high ceiling. I do not want to start Jordan Love. I think you really have to bench Jordan Love. There's enough good quarterback options to just bench Jordan Love. I think it probably bodes well for Josh Jacobs, for Jahmyr Gibbs, for David Montgomery. I think even Sam Laporta potentially. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm still not benching. I think Jaden Reed's still startable, by the way. Just a slightly less high ceiling, I think, in a deep passing game here. Plus, Jordan Love's dealing with an injury, too. He's not 100%. So that's the Weatherman Sam report today. Moderate concern. I'm not saying bench all of these guys because we're not – the only times where I'm going to tell you to bench all of the passing game in a weather report is when the wind is sustained around 25 or over 25 miles an hour. That's when it gets – you just really can't pass effectively. But there's going to be moments in this game where the wind's not gusting and they can throw. Like rain is not on its own that scary. It's combined with the wind that's really scary. Coleman or Keenan now, Sam? Yeah, I think it's Keenan over Coleman still. This is still kind of a scary matchup for Coleman versus the Dolphins. He's really, really broken out over the last two games. 9 catches, 195 yards, and a touchdown in his last 2 games. No Amari Cooper now. I think this one's probably close. Let me pull up the updated ranks we got here. We got Keon Coleman ahead of Terry McLaurin. We have him ahead of Keenan. I think it is Coleman. I think it is Coleman over Keenan. I changed my mind looking at our new updated ranks here. Shakir ranks as wide receiver 14 now. He's got to be started also. Shakir and Coleman, really good. DraftKings lineup. I got you the DK lineup up. We got it on the YouTube live. Come to the YouTube live. If you're watching live on TikTok, you can see the DraftKings lineup up on screen right now. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. Hit the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, we're in the portion of the live where I'm just going rapid fire, answering as many start-sit questions as I possibly can. But if you're on TikTok, I won't see your comment unless you're following. That's just how it shows on TikTok. It shows the follower comments over the non-follower comments. We got a lot of followers in here. So hit the follow button if you want your comment answered on the TikTok live. Appreciate that. BTJ or McConkey? Yeah, it's such a close one, man. I think Brian Thomas Jr. versus McConkey. I lean McConkey just slightly. I think Brian Thomas Jr. has a higher ceiling. McConkey has a safer floor. Pulled it up and the question wasn't answered. I got you, Chase. My bad. When we get into the rapid fire section, sometimes that happens. Josh Downs, I'm playing over all these guys. Chase, I'm playing Josh Downs over McBride. I'm playing Josh Downs over Ladd. I think I'd probably go Ladd over McBride too. I think it's Downs and Ladd over McBride. And then McNichols or Rashad. Yeah, I think it's still Rashad over McNichols. BTJ or Moore, DJ Moore versus Brian Thomas Jr. I think it's DJ. Why is everyone so high on Taysom Hill? Yeah, so if you guys are just tuning in and you're just catching up to the Taysom Hill stuff, one of the free player props of the day is Taysom Hill over half a touchdown. And Taysom Hill's a top 10 tight end option this week. It is National Taysom Hill Day. And we get a few of these every season. This is really the first one this season. There's no Kendre Miller today. There's no Jamal Williams today. So the 2 backup running backs for the Saints, they're out, not playing. Taysom Hill is the running back 2 for the Saints today, and they get the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers have allowed the most touchdowns to running backs this season. What other position have they allowed the most touchdowns to? It's tight end. So the 2 positions Taysom is going to be playing today, tight end and running back, the Panthers have been crushed by. So Taysom's got a great chance at a touchdown. He's got a great chance at multiple touchdowns. So yeah, the ceiling's there. I'm playing him over Tucker Kraft. I'm playing Taysom Hill over Pitts, over Hawkinson, over Ferg, over Andrews, over Kincaid, over Kraft. I'm playing Taysom over all those guys. JSN, Downs, JT, or Chase Brown PPR. Yeah, it's Downs. And then JT versus Chase Brown is close. I think it's got to be Jonathan Taylor over Chase Brown still. I think Chase Brown maybe projects slightly better in the Walter Picks app. I think I would go JT though over Chase Brown personally. And I'm playing Chase Brown JT easily over JSN. Yeah, I guess it's not amazing to play Downs and JT in the same lineup. So maybe you tuck yourself into Chase Brown for that reason. In a PPR league, Chase Brown probably will get more catches than JT, though I think JT's receiving upside is increased with Flacco starting. Close call. But yeah, personally, I'm going JT and Josh Downs over Chase Brown. Dobbins or Chase Brown? It's Chase Brown. Chase Brown's the top 12 option. Let's go to the running backs here. Pull the running backs here on the YouTube live as well. So the breaking news in this live stream, just in the last 10 minutes, Brian Robinson Jr., he's out. B-Rob's out. And we also know now that Amari Cooper's out. Jermaine Burton is healthy scratched. Going to be addressed publicly after the game, per source. Not good for Jermaine Burton. Ezekiel Elliott's out. Tony Pollard is in. Xavier Legette is in. Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker are both startable this week versus an injured Saints secondary. What do you think about Olave versus Downs? Yeah, so Downs projects better than Olave. I'm going Olave over Downs. They project very similarly, actually. I just don't think you can bench Olave. I like Downs a ton. I think Downs is a must start in basically all leagues. I'm not playing Downs over Olave. I'm not playing Downs over Neighbors, even though he projects a bit better than Neighbors. I'm not doing that. No. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, I forgot to put Scary Terry in the wide receiver ranks. That was just a miss on my end. He should be at the end of tier 3. He's right in the end of tier 3 for the wide receiver ranks. But yeah, Downs projects a little bit better than Olave and Neighbors, and even London. I don't think you can start him over any of those 3 guys, but I'm playing Downs over Nakua. And I like Olave's receptions line today. The 4 free player prop today, I like Taysom over half a TD. I like Olave over 5.5 receptions. I like Hawkinson in his first game back. Hawkinson had 6.3 receptions per game last year. That was 3rd most among tight ends last season. They set his line at 3.5. He's playing the Colts, who have allowed the most receptions to tight ends this season at 8 receptions per game to tight ends from the Colts. And it sounds like Hawk's going to be full go right away. I think Hawkinson's probably a little bit even safer option than Taysom, but Taysom's got a higher ceiling. I would go Taysom over Hawk. I would go Njoku over McBride. Yeah, Hawkinson line feels close to free money. As close to free money can get. It's never free. Nothing's ever free. QB ranks, please. Yeah, I got you the QB ranks. Go back to the QB ranks here on the YouTube live too. And I like JT's receptions line too as a free player prop. Good morning, Sam. It is Elijah. It does not feel like morning, man. We are deep into the afternoon as far as my body is concerned. We've been up for 7 hours, I think, at this point. Getting ready for this live, being on this live. We're 3 hours in. Bo Nix or Kyler? Yeah, I lean Nix over Kyler, but it's close. Start 2, Reed, Madison, Dobbs, Tillman, full PPR. Yeah, so I think you got to go Reed in this one. It's probably Reed and Tillman. You could play it safe and just go Reed and Dobbs, but how safe is that really in a game with 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts and heavy rain? I do not want to start Madison at all. He's one of the least exciting starts, I feel like, in all fantasy. At least these receivers, I feel like, have some semblance of a ceiling. They said after the game they want to get Zamir White more involved. Madison had 1.1 yards per carry in the tough matchup versus the Chiefs last week. Yeah, I think you just go Reed and Dobbs here. I think Reed and Dobbs is fine. Start Waddle or Marvin Harrison Jr. I'd go Marv. Mondre or Montgomery, I'd go Montgomery. Sam the man, what's up? What's going on, Xavier? Made league-winning trades in both my leagues. Got Nico and Javante for Connor Dell. Nice. Getting Nico right now is a league-winning move for sure. You got Kyron and Bijan too. Let's go. Hill and Downs. Yeah, I love it. Love it. I think getting Tyreek right now, league-winning move. Downs definitely arrow pointing way up with Flacco starting now. And Nico's definitely a league-winning guy to go try to trade for sure. Bateman or Coleman? It's Coleman over Bateman. Definitely Coleman over Bateman. I got Lamar, then Hurts, then Allen. They're all in the same tier, super close together. Then Jaden Daniels. Zay Flowers or Brian Thomas Jr., I'd go BTJ. Why is Love so low? Because he's dealing with an injury, and he's playing in 30-mile-an-hour wind gust and heavy rain. I'm out on Jordan Love this week. Keon or JSN at flex? God, this one's close. I think Keon's got a higher ceiling for sure. JSN's got a safer floor. I think I still lean slightly towards JSN. I would go Marvin Harrison Jr. over Taysom Hill. Half PPR, though, it actually might be close. Let's see if Walter agrees with me on this one. By the way, guys, if you haven't checked out the Walter Picks app yet, I do not know what you're waiting for. You are actively at a disadvantage in your fantasy league without the Walter Picks app. It's a free app. It's in the TikTok bio. It's in the YouTube description. I spent the last 4 years of my life helping build this app. It uses AI projections for the best possible projections you can find custom to your league settings. And man, Taysom over Marvin Harrison Jr. in half PPR league, I think it might make sense. Walter thinks it makes sense. You get the running back 2 for the Saints. He's the backup to Kamara this week. Kamara is not going to play more than 60, 70% of the snaps. Like, he just doesn't have a role like that. So Taysom's getting what, at least like 10 carries, at least 10 touches versus the dead last run defense in the NFL. I mean, I think it's reasonable. Chase Brown, Monty, Tracy. I'd go Brown, then Tracy, then Monty. That's how I would rank it. Love the content. Thanks, man. Appreciate all the positivity from everybody in this live stream, guys. Sending positivity your way to Chase Brown or Marv. Yeah, it's Chase Brown over Marv. I'm going Neighbors, then London, but it's super close. Dobbins or Mostert. I think it's Dobbins over Mostert. Let's switch back to the running back ranks here. Again, Brian Robinson Jr. is out. That just broke recently. That's definitely good for Eckler. Jonathan Brooks expected to make season debut next week in week 10. Let's go. Love to see that. That's going to be a fun debut to watch. Last really week, you can truly trust Chuba Hubbard. Pollard or Connor? I lean Connor over Pollard. But much better matchup for Pollard. I think better role situation in offense for Connor, though. I'm playing McConkey over D-Hop. Brian Thomas Jr. over Ridley, I think, is fine. I'm playing Eckler over D-Hop. I'm playing Bo Nix over Kyler. It's close, though. Coker or Tolbert? Yeah, so I knew we were going to get some Jalen Coker questions today. Jalen Coker is an interesting sleeper. But make no mistake, guys, he's a sleeper. He's an undrafted rookie from Holy Cross playing with Bryce Young. The matchup's good. The Saints have injuries on the secondary. Both Coker and Xavier Leggett are interesting sleepers. And yeah, I think I would go Coker over Tolbert. Yeah, I think the floor is better, ceiling similar here. Samo, I love all the different nicknames on the YouTube live comments. We got Samster, Samo, definitely a bunch more I can't think of on the spot. Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley, happy PR. Oh, man. Yeah, I have such a tough time with Jaden Reed this week with the weather report there. Definitely makes me a little less excited. I still think he's got an intriguing ceiling. We're still in half PPR here. Yeah, it's Reed. I think it is Reed over Ridley. Half PPR doesn't really change much with these two guys specifically. In another league, full PPR. Yeah, I think that full PPR one, go with Brian Thomas Jr. and Coleman. Brian Thomas Jr. and Coleman over Jaden Reed. Trade Higgins for Pollard? It's fair. I mean, when are we going to see Higgins back? I mean, it's a fair trade, especially if we need a running back this week. I'm playing Pollard over Chubb. I'm playing Josh Downs over Chase Brown. B-Rob is out. Yep. These rankings were obviously before that. B-Rob's out. Big bump up for Eckler. Get B-Rob out of your lineups. Amari Cooper's also out. That's also big news. Thoughts on Rome this week? Yeah, Rome Odunze is an interesting flex option. I'm starting him in one of my leagues. I'm starting him over Tyler Lockett in that league. It's a good matchup for the Bears receivers this week. Odunze actually led the team in fantasy points last week, I believe, at the receiver position. He had 6 points. I'm in a half PPR here. Let's switch back to PPR. He had, I think, 8 points in PPR leagues last week. 8.4. Let's go to the Bears here. Let's compare these 3 Bears receivers on the YouTube live right now. By the way, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, we are also live on YouTube. It's a better viewing experience on YouTube. It is. I can share screen on the YouTube live, where I can't do that on the TikTok live. I'll go to the wide receiver rankings next. So Odunze had 8 points last week for the Bears. Keenan had 5 or 5.9. He had 6 points. And DJ Moore had 5.4. So Odunze actually led the receivers in points. They all did bad, though. Much better matchup this week. Keenan and DJ Moore are playing more. I still think Odunze is one of the most underrated receivers, just period, in the NFL. I don't think the general NFL fan still kind of understands the talent prospect profile for Odunze and how good he potentially is and can be. Maybe we see it this week in a better matchup versus the Cardinals, a close game potentially versus the Cardinals. But he's a flex option. And Moore and Keenan, they're better starts than him still because they're playing more and more likely to see more targets. McNichols or ETN? Oh, man. I mean, these are the tough ones here. ETN's so tough. to trust. We got ETN projected as wide receiver 39, and McNichols at running back 39. McNichols at running back 44. It's ETN. It's ETN over McNichols. Madison or Mooney? I'd go Mooney. Do you want Madison, who played the Chiefs last week, at 1.1 yards per carry? I get it's a tough matchup, man, but the Raiders running backs are just brutal start-sit decisions. I'm playing Brian Thomas Jr. over Waddle. So these wide receiver ranks, these are from when I started the live stream over 3 hours ago. I accidentally left McLaurin out here. He should be in tier 3. There's a lot of things that I disagree with the wide receiver ranks that I started with on this live. One of the big things, I'm starting Brian Thomas Jr. over a bunch of the guys that are listed ahead of him here. I would start BTJ and Keon Coleman too. He rose up with Mark Cooper out. I would start Keon Coleman and Brian Thomas Jr. over Jaden Reed. I think Lad McConkey versus those guys. McConkey maybe has a slightly better floor. Both guys have a higher ceiling than McConkey. Brian Thomas Jr. especially. I think I'd probably go McConkey over them. I think I'd play them both over Keenan Allen. I'd play them both over Calvin Ridley. I'm not playing them over Khalil Shakir. I think Shakir rises up to tier 2/3 as well. Cortland Sutton and Michael Pittman and JSN, that's the tier that Coleman and Brian Thomas Jr. find themselves in, and they have a really high ceiling. DJ Moore or Connor, PPR. Yeah, I think I'd go Connor over DJ. I think all three Bears receivers, they do have a floor because there's 3 of them. Let's see here. Yeah, it's Connor over DJ Moore. Eckler where? Yes, Eckler's probably, if I go back to the running back ranks here, we got Eckler now at running back 18. Him over Dobbins. I played Eckler over Dobbins. I think I'd go Eckler over Madison, over Bigsby, over Mondre, over Chubb, over Javonte. Him versus Monty is close. I think I'd probably go Monty over Eckler. Him versus Jacobs is close. I think I'd probably go Jacobs over Eckler. Chuba Hubbard, I'd probably go over Eckler. Hunt, I'd probably go over Eckler. Swift, I'd go over Eckler. Tracy, James Cook, Tony Pollard, I still think I'd play over Eckler, but I'm going Eckler over Chubb, over Javonte, over Rashad White, over Bucky Irving, over Tank Bigsby, over Madison. I think I'd go Eckler over those guys now with B-Rob out. Pittman, D-Hop, or Bigsby, pick 2, standard league. Oh, man. In a standard league, it's probably Pittman and Bigsby. In a standard league. In a half PPR or PPR league, I think it'd probably be Bigsby there. D-Hop there. Injuries and buys are killing me. You're not alone. Start Miles Sanders, McNichols, or Roschon Johnson. Yeah, don't start Roschon. Sanders had 7 catches last week. So I get where you're coming from with that one. It's probably McNichols, though. I think it's probably McNichols. Sam, any side you're leaning on for the games? Yeah, let me get to that in a sec. Dobbins probably over Chubb and over Hopkins and PPR. Any sides you're leaning on for some games? Also, I heard Hubbard is cooked after this week. Oh, God. Yeah, we got Jonathan Brooks returning, sounds like in week 10. There was a report that just came out about that. All right, so looking at the games, there's some big underdogs that I think are getting a lot of points. The Broncos, they're 9-point underdogs. I think I would take the 9 there. I think the Bears beat the Cardinals. They're 1.5-point underdogs. That's definitely one of my preferred ones. You got the Bucs on Monday night, 9-point underdogs. I probably would take the 9 points there as well. The Jags are 7.5-point underdogs. I don't feel great about that one. I think the Eagles have to score a first quarter point today, guys. How have the Eagles not scored a first quarter point still this season? I mean, crazy stuff. It's not like the Eagles are having a bad season. The offense has been good. And they get the Jags this week. I mean, there's probably not a single team that's played the Jags and not scored a first quarter point. They got to score in the first quarter in this game. The Eagles definitely could score a lot in this game. They were not going to be able to slow down A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith in this game. I mean, the Eagles, guys, they scored 37 points last week. Still no first quarter points. They scored 28 points the week before that. Still no first quarter points. It's not like they haven't had good offensive games. They've had multiple games over 30 points. I mean, crazy stuff, man. Olave or Cup? Yeah, I go Olave over Cup. You got to start Olave. Let me run back with the free. I got 4 free player props today. Yeah, Scary Terry I accidentally left out. He's in tier 3. Math. What's going on, Alex? Yeah, I don't have the math hat on, but it's behind me if you're watching live on YouTube. Got the Weatherman Sam hat on today because we got some bad weather in the Packers-Lions game. Some bad weather in the Packers-Lions game. That's why Jordan Love's a must bench. Taysom Hill over half a touchdown. Olave over 5.5 receptions. Hawkinson over 3.5 receptions. And we got JT over 2.5 receptions. Those are the free player props of the day. Rico Dowdle or Rashad White, full PPR. I think it's Rashad. I mean, I get Zeke is out. Dalvin Cook's going to be involved. Luke Gay, the fullback for the Cowboys, has at times led the backfield in snaps. I mean, just brutal stuff, man. It's brutal stuff. Hey, Sam, PPR. Javonte or D-Hop? What's going on, Colton? Appreciate seeing you in the YouTube live. I think it's D-Hop versus Javonte. So they said that Audric Espe is going to be more involved this week. There was a report about that this morning. I like D-Hop as a sleeper this week. First, in a really good matchup versus the Bucs. They're saying he's going to be playing in the Rashee Rice Juju role this week. I feel like there's an intriguing floor and ceiling there. Javonte is coming off a really disappointing game. He only had 2.6 yards per carry versus the Panthers. So yeah, I think I'd probably go. Personally, I think I'd go D-Hop there. I feel pretty good about D-Hop being a sleeper this week. He's going to play more than last week, almost definitely. Montgomery versus Mooney. PPR. It's Montgomery. Play Montgomery over Mooney. Should I start Drake London or Devontae Smith? Yeah, both really, really good options. I like Montgomery. I'm sorry, I like Devontae Smith. I like Drake London. I think it's probably London over Devontae Smith. Yeah, I would go London over Devonta. Should I bench Amon-Ra for Cup? No, we're not benching Amon-Ra, even with the weather report there. Again, heavy rain and significant winds in that Packers-Lions game, but not sustained significant winds. It's wind gusts around 30 miles an hour plus heavy rain. But yeah, you're not benching Amon-Ra. BTJ, Jacoby, or Xavier Legette. Yeah, so it's Jacoby if you want the floor, and it's BTJ if you want the ceiling. I personally think it's Jacoby here. Jacoby played great last week versus the Chiefs. A tough matchup versus the Chiefs. And Jacoby Myers kind of balled out. Now he gets a better matchup versus the Bengals. He had 6 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown last week. 26% target share in his first game back. He's playing every snap. 17 points versus the Chiefs. Higher ceiling for Brian Thomas Jr., but I think I'd probably go Jacoby. Unless you really want to push it for the ceiling. I'd play Jacoby, I think, over McLaurin too. Laporta or an Njoku? Yeah, let's hop to the tight end ranks. It's Njoku over Laporta. It's Taysom over Pitts. It's Taysom over Hawk. I think Hawkinson's maybe a little safer. Maybe just a little bit safer than Taysom Hill, but Taysom Hill gets the Panthers. He's the running back 2 for the Saints this week, and he gets the Panthers. Neighbors or Coleman? Yeah, you're not benching Neighbors for Coleman. I'm playing Myers over Reed. Amari out, so Kincaid up. I still don't think Kincaid is a great option. I still don't think he has a great ceiling. We're benching Jordan Love this week. Yep. He's dealing with an injury. He's playing in a game with heavy rain and 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. I'm playing Chase Brown over Kareem Hunt for sure. Chase Brown really has to be started in most situations. Playing James Cook, then Chase Brown, then Tyrone Tracy. That's how I would rank those guys this week. I would go Kincaid over Kraft. Kraft is definitely some concern with the weather report there too. Marv, DJ Moore, Josh Downs, JSN. Yeah, I think it's the middle 2 here. I think I'd go DJ Moore and Josh Downs. Definitely playing Josh Downs. It's really Marv, DJ Moore, JSN. I think I prefer DJ Moore over JSN. They're really close here in the ranks. And over Marv too. Yeah, it's DJ Moore. I'm playing McConkey over Jaden Reed. QB ranks. Yeah, let's hop to the QB ranks. Knicks or Lamar. We're not benching Lamar, guys. We got Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels. They have the clear tier 1. Switch over the QB ranks here on the YouTube live too. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now, especially people that have been in here for a while. We're over 3 hours into this live stream now. If you aren't following on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. That's the only way I'll be able to see your comments and get to your start sits. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button too. We're trying to hit 15,000 YouTube subscribers this season. Appreciate everyone in this live stream right now, guys. Seriously, look forward to these lives all week long. All right, let's get to some more here. Brown, Connor, or Downs? Pick 2. Yeah, bench Connor. Play Brown and play Downs. Downs and Brown are 2 of the must-starts this week. I'm playing Keenan over Taysom. I'm playing Evan Ingram over Taysom. There's no Christian Kirk. There's no Gabe Davis this week. Evan Ingram is a good start. Laporta versus Eckler in the flex. That's pretty close. Won't they have to use BTJ? Yeah, they will. Yeah, they will. That's why I'm telling a lot of people to start Brian Thomas Jr. for the ceiling. It sounds like he's going to play his normal allotment of snaps. He's dealing with a chest injury that people thought was going to be week to week, and it didn't end up being. I would play him over Dobbs. I would play Brian Thomas Jr. over Jaden Reed. Him versus Pittman, I think, is close. Him versus Flowers, I think, is close. I would play him over Dobbs, though, for sure, with the weather report for the Packers. Happy Sunday, Big Sam. How are we doing, Zachary? Pollard or Dowdle? Yes, Pollard. Coker or Leggett? Yeah, I lean Coker just barely over Leggett, but it's close. I think it's unlikely both play well, but one of them is probably going to have a usable week, and I lean towards Coker over Leggett, but I'm playing Brian Thomas Jr. over both of them very easily. I think I'd go Coker over Lockett. Worthy versus Coker? Let's do this one. You're definitely playing Brian Thomas Jr. over Coker, over Leggett, over Lockett, over Worthy. Let's do this one quick. Worthy versus Coker versus Lockett. And Lockett may project the best. Man, these guys are all really, really close. Yeah, it's Coker, man. And the Saints are without multiple pieces of their secondary. They've been kind of torched by the slot recently. So, yeah, I think it's Coker. Josh Allen or Jaden Daniels? Yeah, I think I lean Josh Allen just barely. James Cook or Monty? It's James Cook. James Cook torched the Dolphins last time we played them. Ridley or Reed? I think this one's probably still Reed, but it's close. Start Bo Nix or Burrow? Yeah, I'd lean towards Burrow over Nix. Don't play Bucky Irving this week. Find a way to not play Bucky Irving. I'd rather play Taysom. I think Michael Wilson, yeah, maybe there's an argument for him. No running backs are doing well versus the Chiefs. Tua or Love? Yeah, I'm benching Love. Tyreek Hill and then Neighbors. You're not benching Tyreek Hill. Hudson, how we doing, man? One flex, one running back, one receiver. Half PPR, 0.25 per rush. Definitely favors the running backs here a decent bit. You're playing Chuba Hubbard and Hunt in this league. And then the receiver is Josh Downs. Play Downs, Chuba, and Hunt in this league for sure. Lawrence over Love. Don't start Jordan Love in a game with heavy rain, heavy wind, and he's dealing with an injury. You're not benching Lamar. Play Lamar over Dak. I'd play Dobbins over McBride. Is Love even playing? He is. It does sound like he's playing. Why start Hawkinson coming off the injury? Sounds like Hawkinson's going to be 100%. Sounds like Hawkinson's going to be out there a normal amount of his snaps. And he was number 3 in receptions per game last season. And the Colts are allowing the most catches per game to tight ends this season. That's, by the way, part of the reason Hawkinson is one of the free player props of the day. Hey, would you trade Monty and Mooney for Collins? Yep. Don't even need James Conner in this. You're getting the best guy who has the most chance to win your league in the fantasy playoffs is Nico Collins. Definitely in this trade. Plus, you get James Conner. And James Conner has a great fantasy playoff schedule, too. It's a great trade. Zachary, how we doing, man? A few questions. Javonte or Julius Chestnut? I mean, Pollard's playing. Let me just make sure. Yeah, you can't go Chestnut here. You got to go Javonte. Andrews or Kraft and Kyler or Nix, all PPR, also DFS. Thank you. Yeah, so I think I got Nix just barely over Kyler. I would go Nix over Kyler. It's close, though. Really, really close. And then Andrews or Kraft, I do prefer Andrews. I would go in Auden over Njoku. Let me pull up the DFS lineup just so for everyone to see on the YouTube live. I'm going with the Eagles stack with a run back with Parker Washington. Sorry, let me pull this back up. I'd go Downs over Reed. Start Tyreek. He never really does good against the Bills. You got to start Tyreek. Two is playing. You got to start Tyreek. Top 5 option. I'm going Coker over MVS. Nix or Love? Yeah, it's Nix. Bench Love. Parker Washington or Tolbert? I think I'd still go Tolbert there. I got Parker Washington in the DraftKings lineup just because I don't think he'll be highly owned on DraftKings this week. But he's going to be playing almost every snap with Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis out. Brian Thomas Jr. is also dealing with an injury, so it'll be interesting to see. Chubb or Hopkins? If that's PPR, I think it's close. It's Chubb. It's Chubb over Hopkins. Let me also refresh. Let's refresh the app here. We got some updated projections in now. Judy or Laporte to half PPR? think that one's probably Laporta. There's a bunch of tight ends I think you can start in the flex this week. Yeah, it's Laporta. I think really everyone through TJ Hawkinson you can consider in the flex this week. Bowers, Kelsey, Otten, McBride, Njoku, Evan Ingram, Laporta, Taysom. You got Kincaid slightly ahead of Pitts and Hawkinson now after the Amari injury. I don't know if I'd push it with Kincaid there. But I think Kincaid, Pitts, Hawkinson all can be considered as flexes. I'm playing Mahomes over Kyler. Show the running back list. Yeah, I got you. I'm playing Pollard over ETN. The only thing this running back list is not accounting for is the Brian Robinson injury. Eckler gets a big bump up because of that. We got Eckler in the Walter Picks app. He's now ranked as running back 16. I don't think I'd play Eckler over Swift. I don't think I'd play Eckler over Hunt. But I would play him over pretty much all these other guys. I play him over Dobbins. I play him over Chuba Hubbard, I think. I play him over, I don't know if I play him over Josh Jacobs. I think he's a little low here. He's dealing with an injury of his own, though. Ankle injury, but he's expected to play. Maybe there's an argument for Eckler over Jacobs. I don't think I'd play Eckler over Montgomery, but I'd play him over Madison, over Bigsby, over Mondre, over Chubb, over Javonte, over Rashad White, and everyone else below. DJ Moore versus Brian Thomas Jr. I think I lean towards DJ Moore there. I play Brian Thomas Jr. over Marvin Harrison Jr., though. Taysom versus Mooney. I think you got to go Mooney over Taysom. Definitely close call there. Monty or Mooney in the flex full PPR. Yeah, I think it's Monty. I think Monty has a safer floor than Mooney this week and is a similar ceiling. I'm playing Kupp over Tracy, I think. Cooper Kupp. Have a good Sunday to you as well, Kylo. Shakir or McConkey. Yeah, Shakir now, I think, over McConkey with the Mari injury. Shakir has 17 targets, 16 catches in his last 2 games. McConkey's been balling too and has a better matchup, but yeah, I think it's Shakir. Michael Wilson over Trey Tucker. Man, that one's close, actually. Let's take a quick peek at this one. Michael Wilson, Trey Tucker. It's Wilson. It's Michael Wilson. Just barely. Burrow or Darnold? Yeah, it's Burrow. Happy Football Sunday to everybody in this live stream right now. We got a great week of games on our TV screens in less than 1 hour. Man, I cannot wait. A lot of tough start sits to get through today. We're starting Keon Coleman now. Yep, because Amari's out. Khalil Shakir is also a start. I'm playing Kyler over Tua. I'm playing Dak over Kyler. I'm playing Darnold over Love. You got to bench Jordan Love. All right, got this YouTube question from Ryan here. Start 1, D-Hop, Marvin Harrison Jr., Sutton, Shakir, DJ Moore, full PPR. Sit 1. Sorry, not start 1. Yeah, you're sitting D-Hop here. And again, I like D-Hop as a sleeper this week. But none of these guys these other guys are sleepers. These are just starts. You're starting Marvin Harrison Jr., you're starting Sutton, Shakir, DJ Moore. Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the worst ranked guy of this list, but he still has an interesting ceiling. I still would play him over D-Hop. BTJ versus Pittman. Yeah, I think I still go Pittman over BTJ. I go Shakir over Brian Thomas Jr. as well. Hawkinson versus Jacobs in the flex. That one's pretty close, man. I think it's still Jacobs, but it's close. I like Hawkinson tonight versus the Colts, who allowing the most receptions per game to tight ends. Hawkinson was 3rd in receptions per game among tight ends last season. McConkey versus Coleman. Let's see what the Walter Picks app has here. By the way, guys, if you have not downloaded the Walter Picks app, if I don't get to your start sit decision, you got to go to the app. It's in the TikTok bio. It's a free app. Let me go to the defense ranks here. I saw someone ask about Pat's defense. I do like the Pat's defense a decent bit versus the Titans. Let me switch to the defense ranks here on the YouTube live too. I haven't talked much about the defenses. Lad McConkey versus Keon Coleman. Coleman gets a slight edge here over McConkey with Amari Cooper out. Man, McConkey's been really good. So is Coleman. Really the last 2 games for both guys. Really just the last 1 game actually for McConkey. I think it's Coleman over McConkey. Coleman's done it 2 straight. McConkey's had 1 big game. Coleman's had 2 good games. Yeah, I just don't think you can talk yourself into benching Tyreek. As bad as he's been versus the Bills in the past, it's still Tyreek Hill. It's still Tyreek. He still has a wide receiver 1 overall ceiling, I think, as a 7-point underdog. Any week where Tyreek's a 7-point underdog, his team is 7-point underdogs, I think you just have to start him. I don't think you should overthink it with someone like Tyreek Hill. Let me hop to the wide receiver ranks. Pittman, Waddle, D-Hop, Hawk. Yeah, so you're starting Pittman here. Waddle, Hawk, and D-Hop. Let's do this one. I think Waddle is a start over DeAndre Hopkins. Is he a start over TJ Hawkinson? That's a better question, I think. close, but yeah, it's Waddle. Play Waddle. This is one of the few weeks you can talk yourself into Waddle, who's been a headache for fantasy. He's not been a guy you can really trust to start, not a guy you can really drop. I saw a Derrick Henry question there. You gotta go Derrick Henry. I just saw a question of Goff or Tupac. I don't think Tupac has a very high ceiling this week. So I think you kind of have to go Goff there. We're at the point in the live where people are asking if they should start Tupac. Tyrone Tracy or Kate Otten, PPR flex. Yes, Tracy. Play Tracy over Otten. You're starting Josh Downs. Start Josh Downs. I'm playing Wandale over Judy, I think. Running back, yeah, I got you with the running backs. I accidentally left McLaurin off that list, by the way. And that list has changed a lot since the start of the live because there's been news. Amari Cooper's out. That bumped up Shakir and Keelan Coleman a bunch. I've wrapped my head around starting Brian Thomas Jr. a little bit more with those other receivers out. Hey, Sam, Knicks or Darnold? Yeah, I'm going to go Knicks over Darnold. The Marvin Harrison Jr., Keon Tillman, it's Keon. Go Keon. I'm playing Otten over Evan Ingram. Otten's my number 3 tight end this week. Very few tight ends. I'm going over Otten. It's just Kelsey and Bowers. That's it. White or Chubb. Don't start White or Bucky this week if you don't have to. They get the toughest running back matchup that exists. No running backs have gone over 15 points versus the Chiefs. Guys, no running backs have gone over 50. There's been one running back over 50 rushing yards versus the Chiefs this whole season. Crazy stuff. Sam, use the app weekly. Thanks, man. Should I start Daniels? Oh, sorry, Daniel Jones, not Daniels. Daniel Jones or Love at Superflex PPR. Yeah, this one's close, man. I got a feeling Love's going to project better. Not like it's the worst spot for Daniel Jones. I think he actually did well versus the Commanders back in week 2. He had 18 points. He's not been over 12.8 since week 5. Yeah, it's Love. I think this is a spot to go Love. I would play Love or Daniel Jones. I think I'm okay with that, despite the weather, despite the injury. There's still a ceiling in this matchup. Still a high projected scoring game in this matchup. Tillman, Leggett, or Bigsby. Happy PR start 1. Thanks, Sam. Why is Bigsby ranked so high? I mean, he's not ranked that high. I guess it feels a little high. The ceiling is like we expect in the Welter Picks app. We're projecting Bigsby to play more than ETN and get more carries than ETN, but less receiving work than ETN. But there's a floor here for Bigsby. Yeah, Bigsby projects the best. I don't think it's crazy to go Tillman and Leggett. I do think Bigsby's a bench if you can bench him. Just generally, if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's going under 10 points because he's not catching passes, and he doesn't have a great chance at a TD today. Jack, who do I like today? Sam, yeah, I like a lot of guys today. The 4 free player props today. Taysom Hill over half a touchdown. He gets the Panthers. They're allowing the most touchdowns to running backs and the most touchdowns to tight ends this season. Taysom Hill is going to be playing both positions today. There's no Kendre Miller, no Jamal Williams. Happy National Taysom Hill Day. Chris Olave, over 5.5 receptions. I think he can hit this one in the first half. He had a 37% target share last week without Shaheed, and now he gets Derek Carr back. The Panthers rank bottom 5 in wide receiver receptions allowed. TJ Hawkinson, over 3.5 receptions versus the Colts tonight. The Colts are allowing the most catches per game to tight ends. Hawkinson ranked 3rd in tight end receptions per game last season, and it sounds like he's going to be in a full role right out of the gates tonight. I'm playing Taysom over Ertz easily, seeing that one on the TikTok Live. And then Jonathan Taylor over 2.5 receptions with Flacco starting. The Vikings allowing the 3rd most running back receptions per game this season. I'm playing Hawk over Ferguson, yeah. I would do that. Let me go to the tight end ranks here. Taysom or Njoku. It's Njoku over Taysom. QB, Love or Darnold. And then in terms of games, I do think that the Bears beat the Cardinals. They're underdogs. That would probably be my favorite money line play today. Love or Darnold, flex, J.K. or Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, I'd go Darnold over Love. Love in a game with heavy rain. We got the Weatherman Sam hat on today because there's 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts in that Packers game today and heavy rain. And I think I'd go Brian Thomas Jr. over J.K. Dobbins. I'm going Taysom Hill over Kraft. Wandale just doesn't have a ceiling. What's the ceiling? Can I do yards per Hawk? I don't hit the yards per Hawk either. I like the receptions a bit more because that's where the Colts are allowing a lot to the tight ends, but I don't hit yards either. Should I start Brown or Mooney? Chase Brown over Mooney, yeah. Seen some people request the defenses. Let me go back to defense. I think Jordan Love's a bench for guys like Sam Darnold this week. Let me switch back to the QB ranks here. Zay or White? Yeah, it's Zay. It's Zay over White. I'm going Goff over Geno. It's close. I actually have Geno over Goff in these ranks. Let's do this comparison quick. Geno versus Goff. Geno still leads the NFL in pass attempts, I believe. He gets the Rams, who have not been a good matchup for the quarterbacks. The Packers really haven't been a great matchup either. Goff is playing in the same game with 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts and heavy rain. Geno has not been over 20 since week 5. He still leads the NFL in passing yards and passing attempts, but there's no DK Metcalf in this game. I think it's Geno over Goff, but I don't feel great about it. I don't feel great about Geno this week. Madison over White, I think. Do QB. Let me go to QB, then we'll go to tight ends, then we'll go back to running backs, receivers. I'm playing JSN over Tillman. Hey, Walter, can you fix the trade value of Brian Thomas Jr. in the app? Let's take a look at the trade value for BTJ in the app. Doesn't seem that crazy. Weatherman Sam, start Chase Brown over JSN. Yep, I would do that. Superflex, Tua, Jameis, Tillman, or JSN. Yeah, it's Tua, then Jameis, I think, here. I play Jameis over Tillman for sure. Waddle or Sutton, bro. It's Sutton. It's Sutton over Waddle, yeah. Let me go to the wide receiver ranks now. I'm playing Mahomes over Goff easily. Pick one for another league. Addison, Slayton, or Leggett. Oh, man. I think this one's Leggett. I think it's Leggett. Yeah, it's Leggett. Play Leggett over Slayton, over Addison. Drop the Broncos defense for the Bengals. I don't hate it. Bengals are a very good defensive option this week for sure. They're massive favorites in this game versus the Raiders. PPR, Kincaid or Hawkinson? It's Hawkinson. I still think it's Hawkinson over Kincaid. I think with Amari out, the Walter Picks app may disagree with me on this one slightly. I think I'd go Hawk over Kincaid, though. Hawk's got the much better matchup here. Second best matchup for tight ends this week versus the Colts. And Kincaid's got a bottom 5 matchup versus the Dolphins. What's the ceiling for Kincaid? He has no games over 13.1 points this season. I think I would go Hawk over Kincaid personally. It's close, though, for sure. I play Pitts over Ferg. I play Shakir over T-Hop. I'd go Kelsey over TJ Hawkinson, yep. Eckler or Myers, I'd go Myers. I'd go Connor over Hawkinson. Hubbard or Terry PPR, yeah, I think I'd go Hubbard here. Let's actually do this one quick, though. Terry versus Hubbard. I accidentally left Terry off the wide receiver ranks in the TikTok lab, but he's a tier 3 receiver, right around that Sutton, Pittman, JSN tier. Yeah, it's Hubbard over Terry. This is a good spot for Hubbard. The Saints have not been good the last 3 weeks versus running backs. No Jonathan Brooks again this week. Ramondre or Eckler. I think it's Eckler over Ramondre now. All right, guys, we're at the end. We're headed towards the end of the YouTube live. We're going to keep going on the TikTok live for another 10, 15 minutes. Turn on TikTok live subscriber only mode. After that, I'll be in the Discord answering any start-sit questions for any of the Walter Pick subscribers I didn't get to. Link to the Discord's in the YouTube description if you have not gotten there yet. As a quick recap, free player props of the day. Taysom Hill, happy National Taysom Hill Day. Over half a touchdown today. Chris Olave, over 5.5 receptions. TJ Hawkinson, over 3.5 receptions. JT, Jonathan Taylor, over 2.5 receptions. Those are the 4 free player props today. We're trying to go 6-0 in week 9 on the free player props. We're 2-0 already from Thursday night. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in on the YouTube live. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the future live streams and the content we're posting on the YouTube, guys. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Good luck, everyone. We'll be back live next week.